high level topic, but I thought of bringing a lot of examples, a lot of scenarios, and hopefully we can have some interaction with with all of you. I can have some interaction with all of you in the chat. I just have to make sure that I have the chat window open. So feel free to drop things in the chat room if you have any questions or feedback, or if you want me to talk about something else, or go back to the points. I will, however, give you a link right now so you can download the slides. It's PDF. It should be safe. You can scan it first if you don't trust me. And also there is an OVA. There is a VM, a virtual machine. In the second part of my presentation, I will have some demos, and there are some tools that I will be discussing. So if you can download the VM in the especially for the second part, and you can play along or try along, so maybe it will be less stressful having to listen to me for 3 hours. So at least there's something you can play or work on. It's a bit huge. I think it's about a few gig of VM. So by the time I reach that topic, you probably will have downloaded already. I'll give you the password as well in the next couple of slides. So that's basically what the plan is. And it is unfortunate that I cannot see you guys in person, but otherwise, hopefully we can keep in touch. I'll give you my contact after this as well. So this workshop is designed for someone starting out, not totally new maybe, but also someone who have some experience as well. So it's going to be a mix of that. There's nothing really advanced in my topic, although if there are topics where you want me to go a bit further, just let me know. Perhaps I will know how to answer it. We are going to cover 3 different areas actually, but they're all interrelated. The first one is incident response. And I will do this from the organizational perspective and try to relate this to maybe the certs, vendors, and other entities in the ecosystem. And what we're going to be looking at is before, during, and after incident, right? So hopefully by discussing that, we will have a better idea of what incident response is really supposed to do. What are the common challenges? What are the things that people should prepare? And what are the things that needs to be improved in terms of tool, processes, and procedures? I'll throw in some examples here and there so that you can maybe appreciate some of the topics that are being discussed. Before going to threat hunting is probably the in thing today. Every security conference you go to, there is going to be a presentation on threat hunting, automating threat hunting, using AI in threat hunting, and so on and so forth. But before going there, I would like to maybe create some appreciation of the importance of threat information or threat intelligence, what it is, how we can get it, how is it being derived. And we're going to look at some frameworks here and there. And I will throw in some tools as well that you can probably try and play with. The relevance, the community aspect of it, and then once that has been established, we go a little bit on threat hunting. For the threat hunting bit, I want to introduce 2 tools. One is Suricata, and the other one is honeypots and honey token. So I have those things pre-configured already in the VM. So that's why I encourage everybody, if they can download the VM. Then when we cover that topic, you can actually try to do some of the exercises that I have prepared there, so that this topic will not just be theoretical. There are some practical aspects to it. And perhaps when you start doing the practical aspect of it, you may have some questions, or you get some ideas, and we can have some conversation on that. So that's the plan in general for the next almost 3 hours, as I can see. So quickly, who am I? As I mentioned earlier, I'm here. I'm Natalia's friend. I've been part of the CERT community, but I'm here thankfully for the Cybersecurity East project. I had different roles with various certs from in different times, from places. I do a lot of LEA engagement and CCERT development, and I'm connected today from Brisbane, Australia. That's where I live now. And feel free to connect with me so that at least I know that there is a person at the other end in this particular workshop. All right. So I mentioned this already. You can download the PDF and the OVA. It's tested on VirtualBox. I assume that it will work in VMware, but it's a big assumption. I did not really test it in VMware, but for VirtualBox, for sure, it should work. The username is analyst and password analyst123. Very secure password with a capital A. Maybe you can take a note there somewhere so that when you launch the OVA, you can use the username. Or if you want to crack it, go ahead. All right, so incident response, what is new, right? I think the whole day yesterday, we've heard about incident response, incident handling, security, and so on and so forth. Unfortunately, 2020, you are still looking at, a lot of breaches, a lot of security compromises, a lot of security violation, a lot of assumptions broken about security, right? A lot of trust broken as well. We thought someone have managed security, but perhaps not. And we always wake up to news of some security breaches, some people getting arrested, right? And the operations will maybe stop for a bit, but following day, it's business as usual. The security news is full of names of malware, trickbot, quackbot, and you name it, they have it, and so on and so forth. But also the sad part about the whole thing is the real impact of all the security incident. And to me, as a security practitioner, being in security for a long time, it's kind of frustrating. It is as if, in a way, that we are not able to do our job properly, or this field is just so difficult or so hard, right? That we are not able to convince as many people as possible and bring them up to a certain security level so they don't experience all these breaches that you see here, right? So the impact is information loss, financial loss, still there, and also reputation, right? And of course, cost of things. Security breaches can be expensive, even to individuals or victims of security attack. So I think at the back of our mind, whenever I do training, or whenever, even if I attend a training, I try to relate to, are the knowledge that I receive here, can they be implemented so that we can really reduce, the possibility, right, of a breach or a security incident. So this is quite new. And I think to a non-technical people, I don't know what your backgrounds are, but I assume, you're doing security or you're doing tech. But imagine those who are not technical, when they see something like this, they might be afraid to use the internet, right? Or they may not really get it, what people do in security, right? All these things that you guys do in security, what is it really? Because we see the numbers going up, right? We see the breaches happening. And we all know in security that sometimes breaches are kind of invisible, right? So you may be breached, but you don't know about it yet. And this is where, incident threat hunting detection comes into play, because you want to reduce the dwell time of the attacker within the network and to increase the possibility of doing detection, right? So I have a lot of stories related to that in my presentation today. So we'll get to that later on. And I think when it comes to security incident in a nutshell, and this is the beginning for the beginner bit. So incident is something when you have a security event that compromises the integrity, confidentiality, and availability of information asset, right? So that's basically the general description of it that you hear a lot. Then you have the word breach, right? A security incident that results in confirmed disclosure or access, unauthorized access to a system, and it affects, it affects an entity, basically. So that's basically a breach. I think in the last couple of years, what's interesting here is that in many nations, I'm not sure about Moldova, in many nations, people are coming out with breach notification laws, right? So if there is a confirmed breach, right, against an infrastructure, against a system, then you must report it to the authority. And there may be some implications, right? But the implication is definitely bigger if you don't. And that report will also trigger a series of activities that you must do, right? To protect the users, to show that you have improved or fixed the problem, and so on and so forth. So I thought that was very interesting, something that was not there maybe when I was starting out doing incident response, and when we tell people to be secure, they're like, okay, we'll try our best. But in some places, trying your best, may not be, just an option. There's also a lot of complexities when it comes to incident response. And I think if you are a CERT, you will know this. One is maybe classification of incident. If you haven't already, maybe you should look at some of the reports by national CERTs, how they classify incidents that they handle, right? It's very interesting. I always like to look at this because sometimes people record the initial assessment that they have on an incident. Oh, this is a spam. Oh, this is a web compromise. This is a SQL injection. But then when you look at the root cause of many of these security incidents, right, it's the malware, right? So malware is causing spam, malware is causing, let's say web defacement, malware is causing web application compromise, and so on and so forth. So it's very interesting. So that's a classification issue. And that discussion can be really useful sometimes, because if you're not really clear what is really going on, then it's hard to find a fix or a mitigation, right? Then there's this whole discussion about defense, which is probably more important, right? We need to harden the system to be prepared. There's also an element of risk management, right? If I hear something that is spreading in Moldova today, right, maybe a new 0-day, my boss will immediately ask me, right, or my colleagues at work, Adli, are we affected by this? What is this? What is our risk exposure to this thing, right? Can we go home tonight and sleep, or this is something that we have to be, monitoring proactively because we may get hit? So that's that risk discussion, right? And as you all know, if you read many security literature, it's the formula, right? The possibility of something being exploited if the vulnerability is there. That's basically when we talk about risk. And I think it's very important for us, even if you think, I'm just doing incident response, for us to have this language when we speak to people, because sometimes it helps to explain complex details, and it helps people understand what they really need to do and what their roles are, right? Then, of course, the preparedness. How do we increase preparedness? Perhaps yesterday there was a lot of discussion about being cyber resilient, right? I think there's a quote somewhere that you cannot be over prepared. Being prepared is always good, because being prepared means if you were hit with something, you can recover very quickly, right? And in a lot of cases, I find security response team have this in their playbook. We want to recover very quickly. But in a lot of cases, many have not really tested this, right? So really, if you're hit, if let's say 20 systems within your infrastructure today got hit by a ransomware, how fast can you recover, right? Or what is your recovery plan, and what's the time for that, right? So I think sometimes we don't want to go into that details, but when it comes to preparedness, I think time will be the determining factor, right? Because then a system that goes down will start to have effects on other things, right? And can bring other business-related processes or services down, and so on and so forth. Then, of course, the interesting question about attribution, threat actor. So there are organizations that go into this to find who the threat actor is and try to expose them and try to bring them to law. Many of my search friends say that, we don't do that. We are just firefighters, putting out fires, trying to recover. If we have time, maybe we go into it, but that's not our role. So, the question of, is this your mandate? Is this what you're tasked to do? And of course, as we all know, sometimes going that path of trying to investigate who the threat actor is can actually take a lot of time and requires maybe a lot of collaboration. Perhaps in a lot of situation, it is the law enforcement community that is designed to do this, right? Because, they have the mandate, they have contacts, they can go and do deeper investigation, not through just cyber means, which means that they don't just do artifacts analysis of PCAPs or logs and things like that. They can maybe infiltrate a threat actor group, pretending to be a buyer of cyber criminal assets and things like that before identifying who the threat actor is. Definitely interesting work, right? But for me, especially when I do CERT work, attribution is probably the last thing that I get to spend my time with, and I only get to spend time doing that if I get invitation from the law enforcement community, right? Because they have a lot of information, and you got to be, you got to be backed by some form of mandate to be able to like pursue that. So there's a lot of complexities there, but I mean, this is what makes this feel very interesting to me. And of course, when it comes to outcomes of an incident, right? I mentioned earlier, loss of income, loss of money, reputational damage is huge. I remember when I was working for the financial institution, the CISO's mandate for our team was just make sure we don't appear in tomorrow's headline, right? Maybe you guys have heard something along this line. I don't care what you do, just make sure that we don't come up in tomorrow's newspaper. Information leak, that could be bad. I think sometimes people tend to mix the symptoms with the outcomes, right? So people will try to highlight, oh, it was a big DDoS attack. Okay, it's big, but what is the real outcome? The outcome is, well, a couple of hospitals went down and they were not able to access the database. A couple of their system went down, so the doctors cannot access the database, and therefore a lot of patients were at risk, right? So I think sometimes we have to think that far in describing the impact of an incident, because otherwise people will just think, oh, it's just a technical thing, just an IT thing, it'll be fine, it'll go back up. So I think as security professional, as incident responders, we kind of have to now talk in that kind of language, especially now that we deal with multiple stakeholders. Now, the last thing about this topic that I find very interesting, and that's why I guess I'm stuck doing this after many years, is that there's so much to learn from other people's experience. And this is where I think the incident response community is kind of unique. Given the right settings, given the right moment, people are willing to share what they went through, right? No matter how embarrassing it could be. But I think that's the only way to improve security, because otherwise everybody feel that we are all competitive. We don't need to talk to one another, and we defend alone, right? And we make a lot of assumptions, when in reality, if we speak to another person and the other person is willing to share with us, we have the answers, right? We will know, okay, that worked, this didn't work. That compromise that happened to us, it was because of this. We thought it was working, it didn't, right? That sort of thing. So I think the value that we can have as a group like this, the people that I cannot even see, but if we get together, share what we can, then it will be really a valuable experience for everybody to improve their security. And I remember doing a lot of talks to executive level management, trying to convince them that if a network security engineer in your company talks to another network security engineer with the other company, that should be okay. That's fine, as long as they're not sharing trade secrets and things like that, right? But if they're learning from one another, you should support that. You should give them that opportunity, because you will benefit as an organization. All right. So anyhow, I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with this Verizon data breach investigation report. It's one of my favorite documents, write-up, that I always wait to read every year, because they kind of talk about everything, right? From the risk aspect, what's trending, what's going up, the root cause of issues, and so on and so forth. So if you haven't taken a look at that, I find that could be interesting, especially if you're a newbie. Now let's set a scene before we go into the incident response process. Some of this may not be so new to everybody, but let's just take an example so that people can relate to. So one day you get an email from a security team from another organization telling you that, hey, we see some malicious activities from your network, and this malicious activity is hitting our honeypot, and this is the log, right? And the log has information about that activity, right? So this incident is very interesting, because it is something that someone else detect on your behalf, right? So the other company here has a honeypot, and they're getting hits from your IP range, right? And what they see in that honeypot is the log of what that IP is doing on their side, which is here executing, trying to download a file from this URL, And also this was the username and password used to log into the honeypot. It was an SSH honeypot, right? In this make-believe story. So they're telling your team, hey, we got this from your network. Maybe you want to have a look at it, right? So this means a couple of things. One, that you didn't see this yourself, right? Another organization saw it, and they were kind enough to let you know, right? They did not put an expectation here, right? But I guess just by reading this email, they're telling you, hey, you probably need to look at this. You need to fix this, right? Because our honeypot should not be getting any traffic from you, right? If the fact that it is getting hit by you guys means that something is not right. Now, let's put that scene at the back of our mind, because when I go through the different phases, I want to bring that example again, right? So this is very popular in the incident response community. I think discussed a lot in many literature, and this is from NIST. We had a NIST representative yesterday who was also on my panel. In the incident response, the steps, the phases, you always see something like this, right? So incident response is a process. Incident handling, incident response is a process that begins before the incident, right? In some books, people talk about left of the hack, which means that, before the incident happened, these are the things that we need to do first. And of course, having said that, incident happen overnight. It's not someone just hack into a system. There's a lot of activities that normally lead to that. We'll talk a bit about that later on. But you find this preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned life cycle in many of the literature that speak about incident response. So let's see if we can apply this. We can apply this to our incident that we saw previously, right? Of course, we have to still determine whether this is an incident or not. But the idea is that if you get something like this and you are not prepared to deal with this, right, then you are going to delay the incident response process, or you may not be able to carry out what needs to be done in addressing the issue, right? I still see a lot of people when they get something like this, they're like, what is this? What does this mean? What are we supposed to do? It doesn't trigger an internal process or internal activity. So that's bad for the organization. So anyhow, so these are the phases: preparation, which means, preparing the organization to be secure and to be ready for an incident. Then you identify the problem, contain, eradicate, you recover from it, and then try to pick up some lessons learned for improvement so that you can be more prepared in the future. So I will not go into the depth now, but let's go one by one. So in this context of this incident that we have just received from the other organization, preparation is the first stage, because preparation means that we prepare before any attack possibility. And this means a lot of things, right? It means that we have to know our infrastructure and network. And yesterday as well, the NIST representative, I think her name was Amy, she mentioned about the NIST cybersecurity framework, which is something that I really like as well. When I work with organization, I try to introduce them to that paper, because it helps people understand, before we do anything, we have to know our infrastructure and our network and what's valuable there. And from there, then we know what to protect and how to protect it. And then we can talk about incident response and incident handling, how fast we want to deal with things, who does what, and so on and so forth. So preparation means getting ahead of the attacker. So this is where you kind of have to know what attacker would be doing, right? And of course, this is where attending conferences, reading reports, talking to another colleague who work in security can be useful, because we get the insight, right? The additional insight of what to expect from an attacker in terms of what they do to accomplish their goals. So overall situational awareness, where your prized assets are, and what we do, what is needed to protect that. Organization, when they prepare, they do an assessment, right? It could be a pen test, it could be a scan, it could be a tabletop exercise, it could be an audit, right? The whole idea is to understand what is there in the organization, as well as identify the gaps. And those gaps have to be filled up fairly quickly before an incident happen. Part of the discussion is also to realize what threat can really affect you as an organization, right? Because different people will have different threat model, right? Different risk factors, different attack surface, and so on and so forth. So that conversation is very important, because at the end of the day, you don't want the security person to be dealing with this alone, right? It's a team sport that has to be done, before the incident. Then you put in the infrastructure for doing detection and monitoring. I have an image here that I took from Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch is one of the tools, I guess, that has becoming very popular because it's free and open source. Of course, there's a commercial version of it, where you can turn it into a SIEM, get all the logs pulled there so that you have a place to search for things, to threat hunt, right? And to identify things fairly quickly, especially if you have an incident, right? So prepare this infrastructure. And I'm not trying to promote Elasticsearch. You can use Splunk, you can use some database, but the idea is that we have a mechanism for getting the artifacts, the logs into one place, so that we can do cross-checking, we can correlate, we can investigate, we can go back in time, right? To see when did this incident actually happen. Was it today or is it 3 months ago? And so on and so forth. So thinking about how you do detection, how do you monitor, where do you monitor, what are you monitoring? And imagine now with the pandemic, in my case, I've been working from home since March. And what that does to security for our organization is that we lost some visibility, because previously everything was being monitored at the enterprise perimeter, right? But now, when we go home, I'm using my own DNS, there is no web proxy whatsoever. So I think immediately we have to kind of adjust how we do security so that we have that visibility, especially for the company's asset. We don't really care about personal activities, but I mean, because we're taking laptops homes and then doing work, accessing VPNs and things like that. So where do you detect and where do you monitor? And that's a question that you have to answer before you start talking about incident response, right? The hardening of the infrastructure, policies and procedures, the boring work, but it's got to be there, right? More and more companies now, I see, are doing vulnerability reporting program. Do you guys do that within your organization, where you advertise maybe on your website or somewhere, and kind of encourage people, if they find a vulnerability in any of your exposed asset that is facing the internet, that they can report it to you, and you will triage, you will analyze it, and then you will fix it, but you also credit them or reward them. Many organizations started to do this because they find that sometimes all these security practitioners that are doing pen testing get motivated, and of course when they find something, they want to report to you, and they want some credit or some remuneration and things like that, and it's kind of a win-win thing. But I take it that not everybody is prepared to do this, because you kind of have to think of the policies and procedures, right? How will you handle it? How will you take the report? How will you give credit to someone who reports? That's kind of part of preparation, right? I don't want to go into that, but something that I see a lot today, and maybe something that you can think about as well. Most importantly, I think when it comes to incident response in the preparation stage is, do people really know how to contact you if they found something, right? Imagine someone found something very critical or discovered something very critical on a weekend, right? And they need to reach out to you. And this person is a nice person. They want to let you know. Is there information somewhere on your website, or what else is, if it's not a website, right? Somewhere that tells people exactly who to contact if it's a security or critical security thing. In this slide, have you guys seen this project, securitytext.org, right? I think that's the domain. I'm just gonna type it here so you guys can have a look, security text. Which basically say, you can have a web page if you want to, but they were trying to kind of standardize that you put it in a certain location. So it's a security text file that contains information about, what is the scope of vulnerabilities or issues that can be reported, and who to contact, what's the PGP key if you need to encrypt the message, and so on and so forth. So the idea is that any domains, any website that we go to will have this security.txt, so that if we need to reach out to someone, it's there. Of course, if you're a cert, then you would have a website already, probably, with RFC, what's that number? I slips my mind now, where you need to define, your constituency, your time zone, contact number, after office hour, during office hour, and so on and so forth. The idea here is to get people to actually able to reach out to you when they need to, so that you can handle the incident in a timely manner. Maybe today, if there's no takeaway, not much takeaway, this could be the main takeaway. Like, if I go to your website right now, can I find that security point of contact? Or do people have to reach out to, if it's a organization in Moldova, they can have to hop to, the CERT Moldova, and then CERT Moldova will have to find a contact. That's fine as well, but it takes time sometimes to do that. It's better if we can reach out to you immediately, somehow, right? It could be also listed in your domain name information as well. All right, so preparation. I think I mentioned culture yesterday about how to build this culture is very important. That's part of it as well, before we can start doing incident handling. When it comes to preparation, I'm going to speed up a bit because I don't want to be okay. So when it comes to preparation, the focus I mentioned earlier is visibility, right? Blind spots, right? The hardening bit. There's a lot of standards out there already, right? I mean, we don't have to start from scratch here. There's a lot of references on how to harden systems, from NIST, for example, from I don't know how to pronounce that, CISA Security, I guess, right? Center of Internet Security. They have a lot of documents that you can refer to, sample processes and documentation, and of course, part of the preparation is doing practice or playbook, right? And I mentioned some of these examples already: central logging, monitoring, endpoints, and in addition to that, the incident response plan. How do we mitigate? If we had to deal with the media, what's the plan? Who's going to be speaking? So the overall incident response management and plan. And part of that is knowing or identifying tools that can enhance our capabilities. Or in the worst case scenario, sometimes I speak to organizations who are very small. They don't have their own team. So obviously, one, they have to rely on maybe a vendor, like a managed security service provider. So even in that scenario, you kind of have to know what will the MSS, the managed security service provider, will do. How fast can they react? What's the engagement will be like in an emergency? What will be their duties? So that has to be sorted out and clarified before the incident. So there's no surprises. Also, there are situations where maybe you don't have any vendor that can support you, but you may have some contacts, some friends, right? And this is where knowing somebody maybe in CERT Moldova, or maybe another technical agency, right? The cybersecurity agency, or other resources can be useful, so that when you are in trouble, you can reach out to them to help you with analysis, forensics, equipment, and so on and so forth. So I think preparation is probably the most critical bit. And this has to be reviewed from time to time as well, because sometimes when we make assumptions, that assumption doesn't hold, right, for a long time. And there could also be, improvements that happen. So you kind of have to review that as well. So assuming that we had all this preparation, right, before we got that email that we received earlier, then we are ready to validate, identify. So identify the presence of an attacker impacting the environment, right? And this can be done in many ways, right? Or we can try to detect different kinds of activities. Attacker entering the network, right? Via phishing, via scanning, traffic that we see from our network to a command and control, right? Maybe that connection is never made, was never successful, but our monitoring system picked it up. Because we had some signatures already in place that just alert us, hey, there's a command and control, there's a connection to a trick bot command and control. Have a look, right? So the initial compromise was successful, but the infected machine never got to speak to the command and control. So we kind of managed to stop the attack in its track, kind of. But you still have to deal with that incident and find out how the machine got infected in the first place. It could be, you know, some activities on a encrypted, some activities on the targeted system. Suddenly, files are being encrypted, right? Or you get a notification from someone, right? As we have seen previously, someone contacted you. Identification can also be in the form as you see a direct impact, right, to users. Sorry, identification here is very important because then it can reduce the dwell time for the attacker. So you kind of, you know, stop the impact from getting out of control or even bigger. And this can lead to investigation or getting more information. But what is key here is that before doing this, you kind of have to have some ideas what attack looks like. And I think this is where sometimes if people have never experienced an incident, it's very useful for them to do this, one of the cybersecurity exercises, right? Because you can kind of role play and get that awareness and get the context and be familiar with the tool, understand what is needed. And I'm saying this because I've come across many organizations where I reach out to them, right? I reach out to them and they were like, oh, we didn't know that this was a security thing, right? Or how did you know this, right? Of course, I know about it because I've been dealing with, you know, with cybersecurity. I see this every day, but to a lot of people, they still have not really deal with this. So if you say, okay, you got to identify the problem, they may not know what to identify in the first place. And this is where I think the conversation, the training workshop, yes, you know, I see someone giving a shout out to cybersecurity East Project. Things like this will help people to kind of, you know, share the knowledge across board. So going back to our incident, right? We have identified it. Okay, clearly that's our IP address. Clearly, you know, our machine should not be talking to someone's honeypot, right? So I kind of have that familiarity that, okay, this is not right, right? Unless someone in my team is actually poking around someone else's system, which should not be the case. But once we have identified it, then we have to start to maybe validate, right? Okay, they gave us a timestamp. Maybe we can compare it to what we have, the metadata that we have, the net flows, or if you have something like Suricata or Zeek, you have those metadata to check. Well, you can also go to the machine itself to verify that that machine has not been compromised or have been compromised, you know, check the system. So we verify and clarify as well, because sometimes the information or the initial information that we receive may not be that clear. So we gotta have to, you know, we need to double check. Then we trigger some internal process to notify the internal stakeholder. So maybe I'm guessing, or I'm believing that we have different teams doing different things within the organization. So that information came to the CERT. The system is being managed by IT. So I ping my IT people to say, hey, we got this message. Can you guys have a look? I think this is an infected system. This is urgent because, you know, it's a compromise and we don't know what else that thing is doing there. And this could be a sign that many other systems are also infected. So we gotta you know, investigate as well. But basically, notifying is important. In many organizations that I work with, I encourage them to have a process where key people are being notified, not to cause any panic, but just to get people to be on it. You know, like, hey, something's happening. We don't know the scale of the damage or the impact, but be prepared for a follow-up or something like that. If you have an incident response system, incident response procedures and policies in place with the system, then maybe this is the time to create a ticket or create a case so that we can start tracking from now. All right, message came in, verified, I ping, I'm expecting some follow-up, maybe some additional data for me to, you know, do some analysis and so on and so forth. And this is where I think if you have defined roles and responsibility, it can be really useful, because then, you know, this process will start flowing from now. Doing some initial finding, right? In our case, I'm just throwing here that, oh, the system that was alluded in the report was a development server that was not secured properly. and has weak credential and exposed on the internet, it's an all Ubuntu server, right? So that's what I got from the IT team. What do I do with that information? I'm like, okay, that's great that we know what the system is. Can we start to do the mitigation, take the mitigation steps? So in your case, what would you do if you had an infected machine within your development environment? Do you turn off the machine, disconnect the machine, image the machine first, and disconnect it at the same time, or just reformat, right? Or all of the above? What are the steps? What's your playbook? That has to be, I think, prepared in advance and get everybody to be on the same page, because some people, maybe they said they're like, oh, it's just a development server, nothing critical there. I'm just going to wipe it out. If you do that, you kind of eliminate that problem, but you may not know the full story, right? You don't have the artifacts. Now, assuming that you have a team that can do some analysis, or you can get some help to do the analysis, that is a crucial bit that has to be done so that you know what actually happened. Anyhow, in the initial stage as well, I think you have to communicate with the person who is reporting. You may have additional questions, say thank you at least to acknowledge, hey, thanks for this, and we'll look into it. Or you can ask for additional information on your honeypot. Can you get us more data? That file that you saw, that URL, was that file downloaded on the host? Can you have a copy of that? Because that will save me from doing it myself. I can do it myself, but if they have it already, maybe they can share it with me. So that's kind of the spirit, I think, when we do incident response. Now the containment bit, the actual response, where we want to mitigate the actions of an attacker. Now, when the honeypot detected this activity coming from our network, the assumption is that the host is still infected. That sometimes means that the attacker is probably still there, or traces of the attacker is still there. Mitigation allows you to reduce the attacker's ability to achieve their ultimate objective. Maybe their main objective is just to compromise that one machine, and then from there compromise more machines, right? But maybe they're thinking more than that, right? So regardless what the attacker's objective is, we just need to make sure that they're out of the system, right? Out of the environment. They cannot achieve their goals. And also, this is where you kind of have to prepare for a long-term response, all right? And of course, there are many examples here: locking user accounts, block malicious IPs or domain, switch port, disconnect affected systems, blah, blah, blah. You can actually do a lot of things here. But the main thing is that try to do something that will have immediate impact. And of course, there are things that may have to be rolled out slowly in the future once you learn what your mistakes are within the system. One thing about containment is that for some of the advanced attack that I've seen, APT-related attacks, where attacker is really quite advanced and has been there for a long time, right? So when you do something, they kind of notice this, and this will trigger an action on their behalf to maybe just trash everything or delete everything, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of one consideration you kind of have to think about before doing something drastic. And this is where sometimes I feel that if you have a team, you can have this conversation, have a chat. Hey, what if this is a bigger problem? We do this, attacker will quickly identify, or is there something else that we can do to kind of let the attacker think that we don't know that we have discovered this, and at the same time collect information, right? So I think this could be a talk, a different workshop on achieving that. But I'm just highlighting that when it comes to containment, it is sometimes not just pulling the plug directly, immediately. There are some considerations that organizations do as well to maybe lure in the attacker to just so that they can expose themselves more, right? So that the overall impact. So you kind of play with the attacker, but this is not easy business, right? I mean, it has risk as well, but something to think about when you do incident response. Coming back to our incident containment, well, we have to understand what is the impact to the organization. My IT guys are saying, hey, this is just a development server. We can confirm with you that there's nothing critical there. We can bring it down, zero impact, right? No reputation damage, no loss of data. I can take their word, right? But I still have to validate. And this will be recorded as well, so that when we do the incident report, we can say, hey, IT guy says, we can afford the downtime, we can take it offline, no loss of data. They said it, right? Because something may happen later on, right? And if this conversation is not recorded and not presented in the report, you may get in trouble. Remove from the network, that's one option. Definitely in this case, that host has been compromised, may have malware. That's a telltale of a Linux-based malware from the logs, the brief log that I say. Where do you do this? Do you do it physically, or you apply it at a firewall? Yesterday, someone contacted me. I sent them an email about some potential compromise, and this person said, "Okay, thank you, Adli. I have blocked certain ports, but I'm still seeing some activities, right?" So then I said, "Oh, then maybe blocking at the firewall is not the solution, right? You probably have to dig into that machine, what is going on there, because attacker or the thing that is on that machine, the malware or whatever, just switch tactics. You block port 80.443, they use a different port to get out from the environment. Yeah. So what are the options? What are you really trying to do, right? So this is why I think the preparation bit is really important. The consideration that you have to have here when it comes to containment is that if you need to do investigation, we need that server, right? We need that machine. And this is where, in some of the forensics training, right, you will see that, well, before we shut down the machine, we're gonna get as much information as possible, right? Because once we switch off the machine, we're gonna lose a lot of stuff in the memory, for example, right? We have stuff on the disk, but we might lose information on what was running there, and so on and so forth, right? So this is where you kind of need tools as well. In our example here, it's a very simple example. We just assume that it's just one machine. Imagine you have to deal with maybe 25 machines or 50 machines or 100 machines, right? How do you automate collection of data? And when it comes to tools, one thing that I always advise people, like when you decide to use on a tool, you basically have transferred your trust to the tool, right? That the tool should be doing the right thing, that the tool can be trusted when you're actually using it. And this means that you kind of know what tools you are using. Moving on, related to containment, part of containment is doing the actual investigation. And this is where, the technical analysis, the malware analysis, PCAP, traffic, logs, they come into play. When you do analysis or investigation, one thing that I always tell people, what you're trying to do is actually also go back in time, right? Because that log that we received had a timestamp, but that's not when it all started, right? That's when they detected, right? Just like when we pick up something in our log or firewall, the moment we detect was right now, but the actual compromise or the actual activities may have started way earlier. So going back in time is very crucial. This is where CM tools can be useful. Time Sketch is another tool. I think that is becoming more and more popular now in doing forensics, log analysis, and having tools installed to collect data in advance, right, is very important. So you see probably a lot of workshops on using something like Beats with Elasticsearch, Wazoo, or Sec. Those on the server, where you can install agents or software, OS Query, Velociraptor. All they do is basically collect information, collect logs, and send it somewhere. And also tools like OS Query, for example, allows you to maybe do query in real time as well on the state of the machine. But this is preparation. I mean, if you haven't done this already, then it's kind of too late if you want to investigate, right? Because you don't, you may not be able to get the data that you want, especially if it's data in the back. When it comes to investigation, this is where also research is very important. Like the thing that we're seeing right now, is it new, or is it really, something that is known to exist in the past, right? And of course, the bigger question, the scary question, is this it, or do we have other systems that are affected by the same thing? And if you say yes, what is your basis for doing that? So incident response is evidence-based, right? It's gotta be proven, right? So if you say, oh no, it's just one system, what made you say that? What was the reason you say that? On what basis? Right. So that's why this job is not a popular job, because people can question you. But of course, if you are prepared, like I said, you have data to back up your assumptions, right? Or you can say, I stand to be corrected, but based on what I've seen, right, it says that it's only one system, right? Hopefully, but we are watching from now on for same signs, telltales, so that we monitor what's going out from our network from next time, given based on the data that we have. Also think about preserving the artifacts so that you can continue an investigation. Maybe you may not be able to uncover everything at this moment, but in the future it may give you a lot, more information, and that will drive you, right? That will drive you to, for example, improve your security or enhance your security. So sometimes a case is not closed immediately just by doing something there and then, right? It may remain open afterwards because you may have some extra information coming, 3 weeks down the road, a year down the road, and so on and so forth. So you can always take a look at that. I just put some random things here that actually, that thing that we saw just now is related to FBOT based on this research by Malware Must Die. And a team member went to OTX Alien Vault, saw this IP address that was shared in the URL. That has been seen before somewhere else as well. So that kind of tell us, what we are dealing with, without having to spend much time, because someone else have done the work already there. Maybe search, a security mailing list, search, and so on and so forth. All right. So I know I'm talking a lot here by myself, but feel free to chime in if you want to say something, or if you have some feedback in the chat. I'm keeping my eye there as well. But if I don't see anything, or if no one speaks out, I'm just gonna continue because we have a lot of stuff to cover, right? But don't hesitate to speak up, just because I'm not stopping. Eradication. This is the longer term part of incident response. So we saw this happen to our development server, and we're like, how can this happen? Why was the server not protected, not hardened before it was used? Because we're lucky someone detected on our behalf and let us know. What if no one told us about it? So it means a couple of things. It means, one, that we didn't have a strict procedures for deploying a server securely before they are being used, even if it's a development server. Secondly, some of our controls didn't work, right? It didn't pick this up. The honeypot was an SSH honeypot, so it was a SSH going out. We should have seen that. For example, the development server network or LAN should not be SSHing out, right? Because the developers are all inside. There was no need for someone to SSH from a server that they were developing something, right? So maybe we should have that rule, right? By default, no SSH out from our network unless you have to, right? Or we have to justify why we have to let traffic out, right? That is on non-standard 80.443, that is not going through our web proxy, and so on and so forth. So that's the long-term bit, because we have learned from this incident. But again, it takes a considerable amount of time to deploy and maybe to convince people. Maybe people are like, oh no, you are too paranoid, Adli, right? Depending on the nature of the case, sometimes we have to kind of reissue certificates or passwords to people, because we don't really know who else is compromised, but I'm not taking any chances, right? I'm going to reset all the passwords, all the tokens on all my servers. I don't care, right? I just want to be safe, then sorry. Just because we don't see an activity from other systems now, it doesn't mean that it's not there. Unless you can convince me that it's not there, I'm going to reissue certificate password. It's painful, but I know some organizations do something like this because they just don't want to take any chances. But of course, you got to be balanced as well. I mean, this is going to be a lot of effort. The IT team is going to do it, right? Not you. So they may be the one complaining about it. So taking system offline, doing remediation, that may have some implication as well. Trying to think about systems that are not directly affected, right? But we don't want to take any chance, right? So this is addressing the unknown kind of thing. Very vague, but sometimes, we kind of have to redo everything, especially if it's a serious breach and so on and so forth. And eradication requires collaboration across the organization, because it requires a lot of people to change behavior, maybe to change, how they do things, and so on and so forth. For our incident, we can just remove that server completely, because IT team says it's not important. But what if it was a web server that is actually in production, and that website have to be up and running? Do we rebuild a new server? Do we have a server that is prepared and we can just bring it up while we bring this down? And how can we verify that we are not importing the old problem to the new infrastructure or to the new server? That's a practice. I remember back in the days, early 2000, when web defacement was a thing. Maybe it's still a thing now. We used to report this to many organizations. They will get this and they're like, okay, we'll fix it. And all they do is remove that single HTML file. The next day it gets defaced again. And they're like, but we have fixed it, right? But you did not remove the root cause. Or they move everything to a new server, right? But the web shell get carried over there as well. So that's an awareness thing. I think that's a procedure. And sometimes when it comes to incident response, we just cannot take people's word. Just trust me, I know what I'm doing, kind of thing. So recovery is going back to non-incident state, enabling system to be enabled and run. And again, like I said, evidence-based, right? Best effort, we're going to be watching closely. No indication of compromise, apply best practices. That's very vague, but there's a lot of best practices for everything. But at the same time, we may keep the investigation open, right? Trying to understand what went on and so on and so forth. For our incident monitoring, and I think to me, a big thing when we have an incident, it's always a teaching moment for everybody, right? So I normally like to highlight any kind of incident, big or small, to say, hey, it's an incident. We should not let this happen. And it's communicated across the organization, right? So people feel that they're part of it, that they have the responsibility to defend or protect the organization, not just the IT guys. So having that communication should be part of the incident response plan. This could be in the lessons learned bit, right? Where we can say, okay, we have compiled a report, but we also want to talk to others about it, right? Maybe in a simple terms that, hey, our server got compromised, and this what may happen to the organization if nobody reported it to us. And this is the impact. That's why we have to be vigilant. That's why we have all these rules in place, not to make life difficult, but to protect our organization. Lessons learned is the biggest deal, like I said, other than preparation earlier, because then it can lead to some improvement, right? We can ask the questions, why, when, how, where, maybe who, right? But like I said earlier, attribution may not be the immediate concern because we just want to eliminate the problem, but we keep that at the back of our mind, definitely. No blame game. I think there's a lot of organizations where they quickly escalate into a blame game. Hey, it's your fault, his fault, her fault, kind of thing. And update your risk information, how you perceive risk within the organization as well. I think it's a very good opportunity. Right. So in the lessons learned, what I normally try to do is try to look at what are the lessons learned for each of the stage. Are there anything that we could have improved in the preparation stage or identification? Maybe speed things up. I mean, we're good, but it's too slow, right? We don't have a lot of things. How can so next time if this happened, we should turn something on that we have the telemetry, we have the visibility. We were not good enough in containment. It was okay, but there were no documentation. People didn't know what was expected, and so on and so forth. So lessons learned for each of the stage, right? Instead of just one big lesson learned for everything. I think this can be even more useful for organizations to reflect on, right? So I think for this section, that's kind of the end of it, right? If you have the slides, I have a lot of references. In fact, I have more than this, right? I think these are some of the useful ones, some quick ones that you can have a look, and so on and so forth. Various tools. Maybe you guys are already familiar with it, but I just put it there if people wanted to just check out some of the stuff that could be relevant. All right. So this picture is just there to cool off the ice before I jump to the next section. I think we have 30 more minutes before we break for coffee, but If anyone have any question, feel free to dump them in the question box. If you want to speak up, I think you can just turn on your mic, I think, right? Or maybe you need to raise your hand, I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, in any case, just put a note in the chat box so I can talk to you. So, all right, so we're gonna move on. Just this picture, it was taken in Bangkok, right? So green. Alrighty, where can they download the slides? Oh yeah, I posted the link earlier, Besnik. I'm gonna put it again. And also there is a VM image there as well. Yep, and I think in the next couple of slides, I will have this link again up, right, like I did the first time. All right, so before we go threat hunting, I want to go quickly into threat sharing because I think it's an interesting topic, and it's something that has a lot of recent development, right? So this is not really to teach you how to do threat intel, threat hunting, but it's basically a summary of what has happened in the last couple of years in this space, and how the security teams, the CSIRTs, are impacted by this, or how this all impact the work of a CERT, right? And of course, it's positive impact, and it makes it interesting. So here in this section, I'm just going to talk a bit high level about what this whole business of information sharing and threat intel is, and how it relates to incident response and handling. And I'm going to end with, I think, 2-3 tools, right, that you can explore further on your own, right? Or later on, if you want to ping me separately, feel free to do that. So information and intelligence is very important. I think intelligence, the word intelligence was used more recently in our community. I'm sure it was used by government or military and spies, but in computer security itself, I think the word threat intel started to show up when many ex-army people, joined the field. So before, to me, it was just information, threat information, right? But now it's threat intelligence. To me, it's kind of the same, but there are differences, right? So if you read some of the literature, there are differences where intelligence is more in-depth insights, right? It could be tactical, strategic, right? So it's not just information, right? It could be tactical things, something strategic, something operational. All in all, though, I think what it means to us as incident responder is that we have additional things, additional data points, or information or intelligence to consider when we defend, detect, respond, and hunt. And this is a good thing, right? This is a useful thing. So which means that if somebody does something and I say, okay, so what are the controls we have on our network? People say, okay, Adli, we have firewall, we have IDS, this is a team member, we have this, and so on and so forth. So I'm like, what are your assumptions, right? What were your assumptions? Did you consider the tactics of this threat actor, right? Did you consider attacks that happen against people? I was going to say competitors, but it's probably entities in our industry, right? Similar industry, because they had this kind of attack. Did you consider all those things when you are deploying all these controls, right? Because those are intelligence that can be gathered either open source or closed source. It doesn't matter. But now our defense, the controls that we have in place, the techniques we use is based on things that we learn or gather from other people's experience or threat reports and so on and so forth, including if you're doing hunting, right? Because people say, oh, a hunt is something that you do without signatures. But then the question is, how do you know what you're hunting for, right? So there must be some basis for that. So this goes back to the threat intelligence or threat information stuff, which means that there must be a process in place for collecting, processing, and analyzing data, separately or automatically, whatever. But I mean, it's a process that is not separate from the incident response process itself. It's part of it, right? It's part of it. So threat intelligence, I did not put any reference here, but definitely I got this from a book. I will put the book later on, I think, in my reference. So analysis of adversaries, attackers, including their capabilities, motivation, and goals. So this is now different, right? Before, I think when we deal with an incident, the thinking was, okay, I need to stop this incident there and then so that it will not have any negative impact to my organization. But now you kind of have to think a bit further, like who are you dealing with here, right? What kind of adversaries? What do they really want? What are their goals, right? The different goals that they have, and what are the techniques that they use for achieving those goals? If I can understand that, I can be more proactive at hunting, right? I can make sure that I understand that my controls that I have in place will defend against maybe 80% of that, and 20% will still have to kind of do it manually, right? So you kind of have more appreciation of your capabilities if you understand, what people are actually looking for or trying to accomplish. So this is where you start thinking about the adversaries, the attacker, right? The human that is trying to basically go after your data or your information, and so on. So the other element of this intelligence is the sharing bit, where it's going to be more useful. It's going to be more beneficial for everybody if we start sharing, right? And use this to evaluate our current program. But also at the same time, I think now with all this discussion about threat sharing and threat intelligence, what has been very useful for our community, the cybersecurity community, is that we can describe attacks, tactics, goals in a more universal language, right? Like a common language to describe it. So this is where later on I will mention the MITRE attack framework. I think NIST also mentioned it yesterday. There have been many efforts before this to do this, but I think that's the thing that everybody is looking at the moment, and has many applications. So if you think about threat intelligence and threat sharing, don't just think about, I just need data from someone to improve my security, but there's a bunch of things that is associated with this that I try to put here on the slide, right? It's the thinking, how we model our security, how we plan for incident response, and also how then we can easily now communicate with folks in the community about what's really happening, so that people will have the same understanding. And when people have the same understanding, they have the same expectation. So I'll give you a real example. This is a server that was compromised. I have different screenshots here, 1, 2, 3, 4 different things. So I bring this here because the person who experienced this attack started out by reaching out to the security team in another organization, the CERT, the national CERT, telling them that I think there is something wrong with my server, right? Why? Because, well, the CPU was like 300%. So the sysadmin didn't have much experience in dealing with cyber security attacks and so on. So I have no idea about crypto miners, Linux malware, security in general. So the thing that they saw was something is not right with the server, 300%, 200% CPU time. Can you guys have a look, right? So the security team had a look, and immediately, well, I was part of that security team. So immediately when we look, we kind of know where to look for, right? So if you say CPU is up, okay, I'm going to see what's running, right? So immediately when we check what's running, then we see, well, there's a bash script that is executing this program, right? And has this server, pool miner XMR, right? Apparently sending stuff out there. There's something here that looks very fishy. It looks like a cryptocurrency wallet. I know that because I've dealt with this case before, but someone who have no experience with it was like, okay, what is that really? I've never seen that before, right? Doesn't look right. And what is also not right is user www-data is the one executing this. So if you are familiar with web application security, you're like, okay, someone managed to come in, compromise through the web server, and running all this application with the permission of the web server application. So that's the first thing. From here, it leads on to maybe there is something on the server. So we look for web shells, right? This is a web server, so we kind of scope in. All right, there's a few possibilities, maybe 5 to 6 possibilities. One of it is definitely web shell. I'm going to check for web shell if there's if there are web shell on the server. Do quick search, found one here. This is one. This is a screenshot of one. For those of you who have never dealt with web shell, it's basically like a console or interface for attacker to upload stuff on the server once it has been compromised, and execute programs and so on and so forth. So we found not only one, but maybe like 14 web shells, which means that this problem has been there for a long time, and there are different vulnerabilities. This screenshot here is related to the crypto miner. So with the wallet information, we can check how much money was generated. And we have this file here, xm2sg. So we have the artifacts. We can get the MD5 or hash and look it up on a site like VirusTotal, or you can upload this file there if you want, but we don't want to touch anything. Just do a hash on it, search for it. Oh, it's a known thing, right? No surprise there. So this is where threat sharing and threat intelligence can be useful, right? It's critical to incident response, right? Because from what you are seeing at the first stage, you can quickly do a quick search or analysis, right? That's one. Number two, right? I'm going to go next, the MITRE attack framework. The MITRE attack framework is a useful awareness tool, actually, for a cybersecurity analyst, right? Because it talks about tactics and techniques. So one of the tactics that we're going to be talking about is initial compromise, right? So to do initial compromise, there are many techniques. Some techniques are applicable for Linux system. Some techniques are for Android. Some are for Windows. So if I'm dealing with Linux, I'm going to zoom into, okay, there's an initial compromise, definitely. And there must be this 3-4 techniques. So I'm going to go hunt there. I'm going to go search one by one, right? So I do the process of elimination here and there. So this is where threat intel sharing, threat intelligence comes into play, because it allows you to have this thinking process as well. So you kind of know what you are looking for. You can scope in, and again, it's a useful exercise. A lot of people here, I'm sure, have heard of the MITRE attack framework. I'm not here to teach what it is, but I think it's something that we can appreciate as incident response community. Developed by MITRE. I think I said NIST before. I was wrong. It's MITRE. So attack stands for adversary tactics and techniques. So it's a framework of thinking based on evidence, and it's kind of trying to simplify things, but not really oversimplify everything, which is great, I think. So it's a knowledge base as well, and you can actually do some mapping, right, as well. And I see now that many applications of it, as we will see in some example. It's community driven, which means that if you're interested in this field, you can pitch in as well. In a nutshell, right, what you have to know, if you have not really looked at this before, is that there are tactics, right? It's still being developed. I think that there is a stable version out. Now there is 4 tactics or 14 high-level goals, right? And within those tactics, there are techniques, how the goals are achieved, right? And specific technique for each implementation. The best part about this whole thing is that it's not theoretical. You have examples, right? So they're like, okay, this is the goal, this is the tactic, this is the example, this is the malware that was do it, and this is the threat actor group that did it, right? So you see discussion, description with evidence, with examples, so that the next time you see a similar incident, you say, hey, this is applicable to that, so I can map this to that as well. There are a bit more stuff to this. There's pre-attack. You can have platform perspective, as I said before, right? So if it's mobile, then not all goals will be applicable. Sorry, maybe all goals will be applicable, but not all tactics. And I think more importantly is the discussion of mitigation. So if we know that this is the technique, for example, if it's a Linux server, then one of the popular techniques to get into it is SSH brute force or telnet brute force, right? So then what is the mitigation strategy for dealing with that? Well, we can, harden SSH, which means that, not everybody can log into it. Limit, for example, limit by location, by IP address, for example, or just disable it completely if it's not needed. Yeah, so you can discuss specifically the mitigation strategy for each technique. So remember earlier we talked about incident response, and we talked about the phases, the recovery, the eradication, and all that. This is where all of this come into play, I think, right? So it can be very, very useful. So this is not an eye test. It's very small. I did a screenshot on the website, but this is kind of the overall view. You can see across board here, the different tactics. There's 14, and for each one, I think, okay, so a couple of things are missing here. Let me see. Oh, is it my screen? Yeah, I think I cut out a couple of things. So you can, yeah, so you can see there are different areas. I'll show it later on then. But under each tactics, there are different goals, right? And some are longer than the other. And for each one, there are very useful description, which I will show next, right? So for example, goal 1, right? Tactic 1 is initial access. So there's always, before a compromise or incident happen, there's always that initial access. If you have a breach or incident, there must be an initial access. One thing that I did not mention earlier, maybe you guys are familiar with the kill chain, right? Like a lot of literature before in incident response or security talks about the kill chain, right? The different stages before attacker achieve their goal, ultimate goal of exfiltration, reconnaissance, this and this and this. So you can imagine the MITRE attack framework is kind of like that, but even more in depth, right? More specific. So initial access is, blah, 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 right? Basically, attacker will want to gain a foothold, exploit weaknesses on your system, right? They will take valid accounts. So what are the techniques? Well, there are multiple ones, right? Drive by compromise. Attacker will trick someone to go on a web page and then download the malware on the machine. So then they gain initial foothold on that machine, right? The target public-facing application, web application, find a web vulnerability. SSH turned on, SSH brute force, and so on and so forth. And many, many more, right? Spear phishing and so on and so forth. So a lot of techniques there. There could be some sub-techniques as well, right? Related to some of the techniques. And I mentioned earlier about mitigations, right? Well, for one of the techniques, an AV could be a mitigation, or an IDS, right? Or restrict web-based content using, using a web proxy, for example, and user training, right? So you have all this reference, which is in detail, which to me is very useful. So if I pick one, phishing sub-technique, again, this is part of the initial access tactic, right? You can see, there's some discussion and some example of different groups, different threat actors using phishing, APT19, APT123. So there's a lot of references, cross-references, which is useful, right? So out of one of the APTs, right, you can zoom into one threat actor, right? FIN7, or you can have the view of a threat actor to see what techniques they use to do their campaigns or their attack, right? So other than this being useful for your own analysis, you can also have this as a discussion internally. Let's pick a threat actor. All of us are scared about APT. Okay, let's pick one. Let's pick one APT. And then look at all the techniques, the tactics, and then look at our mitigation, right? How are we doing? And you can then map, right, this particular threat actor. So for initial access, they use spear phishing, right? To execute their payload or whatever, they use a different tactics here. Malicious file, scheduled task, right? If it's a Linux machine, this is cron tab. If it's Windows, scheduler. And so how do they maintain persistence, right? They have a couple of techniques. They modify registry, so we should be watching registry or change it to registry. What else here? Command and control. How does FIN7 do it? Well, they use DNS, so we should be looking at our DNS. What else here? Yeah, so there are multiple techniques, and you can see here how this can be valuable for not only incident response, but to assess your own capabilities, right, or your controls. More example about FIN7 as a threat actor. So MITRE, like I said earlier, includes a lot of real examples, right, from real cases that are being suggested or being mapped. So it's kind of useful. This is from a MITRE presentation, so that's why I maintain all the copyrights here. So they said there are many use cases for a tool like the attack framework, right? It could be used for detection. So if you know of a technique that people use and you have the data, right, that are being shared, the IOCs or the tactics being used, you can use this for detection, right? There is also for assessment, for capabilities. I will show a different slide regarding this. If you want to do adversary emulation, like red teaming, pen testing, internal thing, you can emulate a threat actor to see if the security team is ready, right? The security team can pick it up and so on and so forth. So you can use this information as a basis for your adversary emulation, which is like how people describe it, right? It could also be a red teaming exercise here. And I think most importantly, the threat intelligence bit as well, because from all the techniques, we can have real data associated with real attacks. And if you can compile that and share it widely through some means, which I will mention the tool later on, this can be an effective way of doing proactive detection and so on and so forth, right? This is an example of an application of MITRE. This is a different project called Detect, but based on the same framework, which means that you can use this to assess our detection coverage. Do we have all areas covered? Can we detect all the techniques, the tactics, right? And you can pick and choose what you wanna measure and see your coverage. So you can say, oh, I'm excellent, or we are very basic, right? And maybe then use this to get more funding, get more resources, and so on and so forth. This is an example of a security report that, or security advisory that describe what is happening using the MITRE attack framework. This is from the ACSC, the Australian Cybersecurity Center. But I find more and more cybersecurity agencies, CSIRTs, are describing the attack that they issue through their advisories using the MITRE format, right? So kind of, I mean, it's standardized thing. So it allows everybody to kind of have the same understanding. So if I don't know what T1190 is, I can actually read up more about it. But it's good to see application in this domain. Now, I think that there are also efforts to translate the framework. I may be wrong, but so that the usage can be used worldwide. Okay, moving on. One thing that we discussed earlier is also about threat actor. So MITRE has that bit as well, but I also want to point out that ThaiCert has produced this threat actor group cards, which to me is also useful. I mean, in assessing our capabilities, right? Not so much to learn who's behind what. I mean, that is important as well, but also to understand what are the common techniques, common tactics, right? And to look into my organization and to sincerely say, we're good, or we don't stand a chance, and this is what we need to do more to defend ourselves against this, right? So these are supplemental data that can be useful for understanding things like the MITRE attack framework. Now, I have a few more minutes before we stop for a quick break. Now, threat information sharing, I think we all know this. We don't just want to be sharing things like IP addresses or domain names, which can change, which are very dynamic, right? I mean, if I get an IP address today, maybe tomorrow it's not relevant anymore because of DHCP or attack have moved on. But if I know the tactics or the technique, I can be watching for those behavior. So that's kind of the idea here, the idea of the pyramid, something that you must see at every security conference, right? So I'm gonna take one example. So for example, WannaCry. So everybody heard about WannaCry, and this is IOCs, right? Indicators of compromise from US CERT about WannaCry, right? So they're sharing file names, is that the hash? Yeah, the hash, things to look for. So they're saying that if you see this right on your system, this could be related to ransomware, right? So that's kind of that's the IOCs. But there could be some false positive here and there as well if you not be careful. For example, command.exe on itself may not be, right, may not be related to WannaCry, right? But command.exe in a very specific folder, right, might be. So I kind of need to have that detail. So I think you get the picture. With more data that is being shared, and maybe some ways of assigning confidence level, is this seen or not, you know, the data can be actually more meaningful. So this is where MISP come into the picture. The open source threat sharing platform. I take it that people have heard about this tool before. Many communities are actually using it. And to me, right, how this fit into our whole discussion about threat intel sharing and threat intelligence is that this is useful in two ways, right? One is that we can have a platform where we can share and everybody can be consuming this data, right? So I share something, I can then get this information out to my community. So we can assign some roles, we can assign, you know, who is in this community, and we can kind of automate all of this. We can use APIs, we can submit this. But it doesn't stop there. It can also mean that if I share something, you can, right? You can also flag it to say, hey, this is false positive, Adli. I'm gonna write false positive. Or I'm gonna say, hey, I've seen this too. So we raise the confidence of that single indicator, right? So it's not just me saying, but you have seen it, right? Natalia have seen it. You know, other people have seen it. So I can be confident to use this data for protecting my network now, right? It won't be a false positive, it won't break, and so on and so forth, right? So threat intel sharing platform, and there's more than just one. MISP is one of them, because I mentioned this because first is using it, I use it, a lot of people in my community use it. Again, the idea is we can share a lot of stuff between communities, right? So the server is also designed to also talk to other servers. You can apply some controls based on TLP, based on some sharing protocol, who you want to share it with. You can also use it for storing your own threat intel sharing within your organization if you do incident response. So in the future, you know, you have a collection of them, you can revise them, you can investigate. So it's not just in random places in people's computer or some databases. So it can be controlled and analyzed and so on. So a lot of integration can be done. What I also like about it is you can also do a bit of automation. You can convert some of these IOCs into something practical like a Suricata or snort rule or DNS RPZ. So, you know, if I see a bunch of domain names and IP addresses related to an attack campaign, confirm, right, this is bad stuff and it comes from someone that I trust, I can just say, convert this into signature and apply it on my firewall. So the threat intelligence or threat information sharing becomes actionable, right? You hear this a lot, actionable threat intel, because I want to do something with it. I don't want to just know about it. I want to apply it if it's applicable to me. So taking that data, the same story, WannaCry, you saw the Excel sheet from US CERT. I'm not trying to make them look bad or anything. I'm just saying that they shared initially using Excel, which is great, it's sharing. But imagine if you have it in MISP, for example, right, WannaCry, then this is what it would look like, right? This is TLP white stuff, I believe, that I'm sharing here. Yes, okay. Just be careful. Okay. Yeah, so we can see related events. We can immediately say, hey, this information that is being shared, right, has many events related to it, right? So I can cross-check as well, and I can see, yes, it's TLP white, and we can tag it, right? This is related to ransomware, right? A few other tags here. Related to double pulsar vulnerabilities, right? So people can enhance it further, right? So these are all the attributes or all the IOCs, indicators of compromise associated with it. You can see a lot of details here as well, some notes that people add, where they got this from, some notes. And the stuff here, if you're not familiar with this, so the stuff here is, you know how like Facebook have the like button, right? You can say, okay, like. So these are the sightings. Yes, no, false positive, good. So you can, you know, even if you're not sharing actively, you can be contributing by saying that, yep, cited, not cited, and so on and so forth, right? So the community can enhance it, right? And of course, other people can then actually use it. So threat sharing platform like this can be useful. That you can do this correlation between different events where you see the same indicators. And this is more if you want to do, you are the analyst type, you want to go deep into this case, you can have that. And I mentioned that, not only we have the data, the IOCs, but hey, I want to apply this to my DNS. I use bind and I want to create RPZ, and it will convert this for me within the system. I can have the option, or you can use the API to do this, and I can send this to my IT guys to implement it, right? So from just information to sharing with the community, you define what can be shared, right? You can share with the rest, but the community will not have a chance to enhance it, contribute to it, right? And even if you don't do any of that, you can consume it in a more effective way. We can automate all of this, and there is a means to apply it to our defense, right? So it's not just stuff that is shared in a text file and I have to import it, create rules anymore. Some of the things that may be useful are done already. So you can convert to a suricata rule as well. So this is within the MISP system, right? So it's there. Before I end, okay, I'm 1 minute over time, but just give me 2 more minutes. There's an additional thing that I wanted to show as well that is related to this, which is the Hive and Cortex. I'm not sure if you guys are using it. And this is going back to our initial story, right? So our initial story, we got this URL in the email message, right? And by reading the analysis here, there are additional hashes, right? So sometimes when you're doing investigating, you have to kind of do this manually. You go to VirusTotal, you go to Alien Vault, you go to different sites just to look things up, right? So there is a tool for this that I really like, and again, promoted within the CERT community. There are proper training actually from MISP and the Hive as well, but the Hive is actually 2-in-1. It's a tool for managing artifacts, kind of like an incident management thing. You can record things. MISP is more for the threat initial sharing enhancement. You can kind of do the same with the Hive, but what I like about the Hive is that if I plug in a threat, an indicator of a compromise, an IP address or domain name, I can use the Cortex, which is part of which is a separate module, I would say, where then you can do a lot of queries to different systems. You have to set it up a bit, set up the API, and so on and so forth. But once you have set this up, right? Once you have set this up, you can then, oops, I don't know what happened to my, can you guys still see my screen? Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So, okay, sorry about that. Yeah, somehow I lost something. So let me just finish this quickly. So with the Hive, you can then query multiple systems. So what I mean by this, if we take our data that we saw before, this is from my own installation of the Hive. So I can create a case. I can say, system compromised. I submitted this, right? And I uploaded a file, the file itself, because I got it, I requested for it. So it does the conversion for me. Not only that, I can then look it up. This file that I have here, can I query different systems and let them tell me what this is, right? So I can run analyzer, and it'll give me, from VirusTotal 33 out of 60, malware score 99 and 100, and all other indicators I have. It's giving me like an overview what this is. I can zoom in and check the details. This is from VirusTotal report. So without going to VirusTotal, I'm getting this report pulled to me. So this is something that can be useful for incident responders, the tooling aspect of it. So not only we have a sharing tool like MISP, but we have a mechanism to describe what attacks are, but also tools like the Hive and Cortex for helping us to do investigation. Okay, let's take a quick break, right? Yeah, okay, this I've said this already. So can we take a 10 minutes break? Is that okay? Everybody? Yes? All right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So I'll see you guys back in at 15 after, yeah? So thank you for staying with me. Come back in 15 after your clock there. I think it's 5:50. Is it 7:15? 5:50? I don't know. I don't know what your time is. But in 10 minutes we come back. There'll be more exercise. So let me just share with you guys. If you have not downloaded the slides, if you came in late, that's the URL. If you want to try some of the exercises that I'll be showing, you can download the VirtualBox VMware so that you can tag along or follow along. So it will not be so boring just listening to me. See you guys in a few minutes. I'm just going to turn off my camera and my microphone. All right, welcome back, everybody. So let's get started. I think we should just get going because the last two parts of this presentation is a bunch of demos. So I think we just do it quickly so that we will have extra buffer if we need the extra time. All right. So yes, so if you haven't downloaded the materials, go ahead. That will be useful for the next few things. Let me just go. All right. So what are we going to be doing now? So one of the things that was mentioned in our workshop title is threat hunting. Right? So now that we have some ideas of incident response and handling, then we went into the threat sharing, threat intelligence, collecting data, applying threat intelligence data to our incident response process, and looking at the MITRE framework where we can understand attack goals, tactics, techniques, understand mitigation, and then now I think we can discuss threat hunting. So because we have a broad idea now of what we are actually going to be looking for, and where to get more information if we need more insights for what we're looking at. So what is it exactly? Well, this is kind of what I think it is. So it's a process of proactively looking for adversaries and threat actors. So this is something that you do all the time, basically, right? You don't wait for something to be triggered, then look. It's kind of proactively looking for anything that looks suspicious, or you may hear of something and you just want to verify and control, right? You saw something that looks kind of legit, but it's it doesn't make you feel good, right? So this human element, there's a human element to it as well, where I'm like, everything looks normal, right? It's all web traffic, but I'm not sure about this one. Why is someone sending some data, a lot of things to Twitter, right? And I know this person doesn't use Twitter, right? And then turns out that there's a malware that uses Twitter as a command and control. So I mean, those things may slip through your security controls, but as a human, you can have additional insights and intelligence, of course, real intelligence, for you to actually combine different tools and analytics and then do the investigation. So looking for the undetected, basically, that's how I would summarize it. Of course, to be able to do this, it must be based on something that you have collected already, some artifacts. It could be logs. I think initially we talked about the tools like a SIEM, having supporting tools, antivirus, EDR. You can have all the the beats, Elasticsearch file beats and system beats and all that, or OS query. So the idea is that you have a lot of things where you can actually then start looking into. It requires nature of attacks and attacker, right? So I mean, this is a common theme of this workshop. We got to know what we're looking for, and we can know by talking to people, listening to presentation, reading intel reports, subscribing to a MISP intel threat sharing platform or any other threat sharing platform, because with that information, then you kind of know how to find things that are hiding in plain sight. Attacker, it's a human operating in your infrastructure, right? So the attacker's goal is always to avoid you from detecting them. So what are their techniques? So we go back to the MITRE attack framework, and this is an iterative approach, right? So it means basically, like if I look at my data today, I didn't see anything. It doesn't mean that it's not there. Maybe I have to keep on looking. Maybe it's not happening now. So it's an iterative process. Sometimes it's a process of elimination too, right? For you to verify and of course validate. So that's kind of what it is, right? Why? I think we kind of know why we are doing this. Faster detection is always a motivation for me, right? We want to detect sooner rather than later, right? It's not about trying to prevent an intrusion anymore, right? So we kind of assume that an intrusion may happen, just a matter of time. But when it happens, I can detect faster. Why do I want to detect faster? I want to reduce dwell time, right? I want to reduce the amount of time attackers spend in my network, because that will allow me to stop them from achieving their goals and reduce the impact of intrusion. right? Because maybe they need more time to do more damage. But now they're just scouting around, they gain foothold, but they haven't accomplished much. So get them out of the network, and of course, improve overall security. That's a given, I think. How? Again, preparation. The infrastructure must be in place. You must have a collection program, like data, net flows, metadata, right? And so on. You need something like a playbook to scale as well, right? So because you want to do this regularly, you want to do this across board. Imagine you're trying to like get information, from, if your infrastructure is huge, you need to maybe do a lot of queries and so on. So it's got to be programmed kind of, so that you don't have to do it manually every time. But of course, there are moments where you want to go in and do things manually. What are the methodologies for doing this? No secret there. It's IOC. It could be IOC based. So let's say today I hear about an attack, a new business email compromise campaigns, right? And I got information, right, that they are using certain subject, title or subject in their emails. So I want to know if any of my team members or people in my company are receiving those emails. So what do? Well, I check the email logs for the mail subjects, right? First, to see whether or not anyone got it, and then if they got it, why wasn't it filtered out? It may mean that my email is not, my email controls are not being effective. So that's kind of the idea. But IOC base is very fragile as well, because today maybe the BEC actors, business email compromise, is using a couple of email subjects. Tomorrow they will change it, so I have to keep on changing it. This is where TTP techniques, tactics, and procedures, right? The MITRE framework is very important. If you understand the technique or the tactic, right, then you are not strictly looking for something very specific, because that specific things may change over time. So kind of have that understanding. And it could also be an anomaly base. So for example, you see a web traffic over port 95, for example, right? Or if you look into your web proxy, you see a user agent curl, right? So you're like, is anybody using curl, right, to access the web? Maybe I have some developers, but traffic is coming from finance. That doesn't look right. So that is kind of the spirit of hunting, right? Kind of searching for the non-obvious, right? Things that are hiding in plain sight. But this is something that you cannot really teach, right? I can give you some ideas. You can attend many workshops, but at the end of the day, we're going to rely on that human brain that we have to look for all these anomalies. Again, with the support of a bunch of tools. So one of the tools that I want to talk about today, I'm not sure how many of you have used Surikata before, but I thought of using this. But and the reason why I want to show Surikata is I want to share the network side of things, which can actually give you that insights, right? And Surikata is quite interesting because it is not a purely IDS engine, right? It does intrusion detection based on rules. So anything with rules, as we all know, is based on known attacks, right? So it will not be able to predict unknown stuff. But it does a bit more than that. Yes, it has some rules that will be triggered if you are seeing an attack that is already known and recorded in the form of a rule. But also, Surikata, I will mention this later on as well, it also captures metadata, right? So some information about the traffic, the flows, right, which can be useful. There is also an element of Surikata, it's protocol aware, right? So when I make a rule, I can say, alert me if you see HTTP traffic. So it doesn't matter if HTTP is over 80 or 443 or 25, 22. If it's HTTP, it will just trigger an alert, right? Or trigger an alert if you see a certificate. So the traffic is encrypted, but we have certificate information. If you see certificate information and the country is not country X, give me an alert. So those things can actually help you hunt because then you can be a bit more flexible, right? So Suricata is one such tool. It's not the only tool that can do this. I pick it because it's open source and something that you can actually play with on your own. But you can also look at Zeek. Zeek is or known as Bro before. It can does most of the stuff that Suricata can do, except Zeek doesn't have the signatures. So what I like about the signature is that sometimes the signature helps me in eliminating my assumptions, right? So I'm like, is this malicious or not? Just run it one round. If it doesn't pick up anything, then maybe it's not known yet, so we have to dig in further. But if it's already known, I'm going to save time, right? I won't be doing any more analysis if someone has done it already. All right, so Suricata, I don't want to go into this, but you can go to the website and read more about it. But these are some of the nice features of it. V6 there. You can do GeoIP, but if you have Elasticsearch and Logstash, you can do that on your own. It's got this file extraction as well, which can be useful. There's something called community ID. So if you are using different tools, like you have Suricata and Zeek, you can do correlation, right? Because it's a similar community ID across the system, which I find very interesting. JSON output. I think many tools now have JSON output, which means that you can use something like Elasticsearch or Splunk, right, as a CM. Then you can do your processing there. Protocol detection, multi-threading. And what I like about it as well is, okay, it can do full packet capture, so you can actually record the whole traffic if you want to. But other than behaving like an IDS, which means that it's monitoring traffic and then writing out the alerts, the output somewhere else, you can also use it for doing PCAP analysis. So I'm sure a lot of people use Wireshark, where you load the PCAP and you do some analysis. You can do more or less the same thing without the GUI, of course, with the fancy GUI at least, with Suricata. Because what it does for you additionally is that not only it is extracting protocol information, it will dissect the packets for you, but also it will give you the alerts, if it matches any of the signatures. And the signature doesn't have to be thread-based. It could be anything, right? You can create signature. If you see any traffic using port 69, give an alert. So you can be very flexible with the signature as well. We will look into that in the demo. So in a nutshell, I think it's a powerful tool for network security monitoring. It's got a lot of interesting features, right? So for this exercise, for this few slides, I think I will do more of a demo, and then you guys can come and follow along. I may wait if you guys want to try. If you have any issues, you can put it in the notes. We can look at together. But if you want to do it later as well, that's fine. You can just watch me do it. And this is being recorded as well. So yeah, I'm flexible here. So I just want to make some quick note. So the VM is Ubuntu, Ubuntu with Xface interface, 18.04. I did not upgrade it, I think. What else? So it has Suricata 5 version 5. If you go to the Suricata's website, it's the stable version is 6. So there are some differences, but this is a working version. I've also installed something called ifbox. So ifbox is a tool for visualizing JSON file, which you may find useful. In a real scenario, at least for me, I normally send the logs from Suricata to something like Elasticsearch, where I do more my hunt or my analysis there. But for the sake of this workshop, I did not want to install the whole Elasticsearch inside the VM. It will just take more space and require more resources. But the Suricata developer have developed something called ifbox, something that you can actually use, and I think you kind of will like it because then it will allow you to visualize the JSON, and it's more practical, I think. So what to look for in this VM is that under the documents directory, right, you find a workshop directory, and I have just 4 examples, EX1 to EX4. They're all separate folders. So for each of the exercise, I'm going to go inside each folder, and that's basically how this is going to flow. Okay, so what I will do now is I'm going to stop sharing the slides. I will go into my VM, and I will open my slides there. I think that will be a lot easier. Otherwise, I will have to keep on stopping my PowerPoint and jumping to my VM. So I will stop for a bit, just hang in there. So let me find. Okay. Okay. So I think now you can see, you should be able to see my my VM, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna put the chat box here so I can see if you guys are sending me any message. Okay, so I will open my slides here instead, so that it's just next to me. And you guys have a copy of the slides if this is too small, right? So you can take a look at your slides. Let's see. So we are on slide number, still have a long way to go. Okay. We are, okay, system one. Presentation. All right, so we are in the VM. So Suricata has been pre-installed. If you are interested in my notes on the installation, you can email me directly after. I did not upload it on the Google Drive, just in case you want it. But I basically followed the instruction on the website, Suricata IDS readthedocs.org. I have the reference there. So I just follow that and install Suricata. I did not use I'm not sure which Linux distribution you guys use, but I use the latest Suricata resource, which means that it's not part of the, let's say this is Ubuntu, it's not part of the Ubuntu package, so it's kind of a separate thing. So I get the latest stuff, which is now not the latest anymore because there's a version 6. Anyhow, just basically, if you want to run Suricata as a service, because this is normally what you will do it, how you will do it if you are running Suricata as an IDS. These are some of the commands. Status, you can check if it's running, you can stop, you can start, as usual. All right, so we're going to go to the first example. And for that, I will open a terminal, right? So let's set this up. Yeah, the mouse is being a bit difficult somehow. All right, so I'll make this a bit bigger. Okay. So in all of the exercise, we are going to run Suricata in single mode. So we're gonna get Suricata to read a PCAP, basically, right? So instead of running Suricata on the network interface, because this is a VM, there's no traffic flowing. I have prepared the PCAPs to download it from various sources, and we're gonna get we are going to get Suricata to read those packets, and then do what it does, right? And from there, I will try to explain what is going on, and hopefully that will be a more meaningful way of telling you guys the story about Suricata than just reading the slides. All right, now I cannot find my slides. There you go. Wait a minute. Okay, so first example. So it's in workshop. So we go. Documents workshop EX1. Okay, what are we going to be doing here? So there's a WannaCry PCAP. Remember we were talking about WannaCry? So there is a PCAP in there, right? And what we want to do is run suricata -R. I know it's a bit tedious to run the command line, but just bear with me. It's not that complicated, right? So -R for read, and we have the PCAP. -L is to tell, dump all the logs into the directory called logs. So in each exercise directory, I have created a logs directory. -K here is just say don't do the checksum, right? And because this is a PCAP, so the checksum might be all over the place. So I don't want suricata to be complaining about that. So we're just gonna run this, right? And okay, so when we run that, so you can cut and paste, but be careful of cutting and paste because I find that PowerPoint have the tendency to change the font, and sometimes if you see the dash and the quotation mark, PowerPoint tend to mess that up. So I'm just gonna retype it because some cut and paste sometimes cause a problem. So we have suricata read, and then we have the PCAP, right? You should have it there. And then -L logs, and then K none. So if you run that, analyst 1, 2, 3. Is it running? It's running, okay. Okay, so it says it read the file. It's a bit slow because I reduced the RAM to 2 gig. So if it's running really slow, you may want to increase the RAM of the VM, right? Otherwise, just wait. So if you look into the logs, you can find, right, a couple of files. So suricata log, stats log, fast log, if JSON. So remember I mentioned about the JSON file. So that's where the output is being dumped. Fast log is a summary of if.json. This is the old version of the log, so we can look in there if anything is detected. Stats is all the statistics that's related to the packets and things like that. We can have a look. File store here, this is for exercise 4, where we're going to dump the content of the file. So you can just ignore it, ignore this for now, right? So going back to this, so if you see files in that directory, it means that you're kind of okay, right? You're good to go. So what happens behind the scene? So we just invoke suricata, which is a tool that we are using here to read WannaCry, dump everything that it finds in that packet in terms of the outputs, the logs, statistics into logs directory, which is called logs. But all this happens because, so suricata knows what to do because we have defined it. We have defined the config. I have defined the config in etc suricata.yaml, right? So this is the configuration file. In that file, you can define many things. So one of the things that you define there is where are the rules that suricata will read, and as it goes through the PCAP, start comparing, right? Do the pattern matching and all that. So that's one thing. The other thing that you define is if you are running suricata in network mode, right? This is standalone mode, I would call it, because we're just asking suricata to read a PCAP. But if you're running this as a network mode, you have to say which interface should suricata be listening on, right? If it's Linux, it's different interface name. If it's BSD, it's kind of different. And there's a bunch of other settings there as well that you have to define. One of that is, what is your network? A lot of the rules, as we will see later on, is based on what is your network and what is external, what is not your network. Because then the rule will say, if packet comes from external network to my network, then trigger it. Or if packets come from my network to external network, then trigger it. So we have to define the IP addresses or the ranges of our network, because the rules will just say internal network, external network. So we will see that variable there later on, but let's not think too much about that because I just want to talk about the rules for the time being. So the rules will be compared, read Suricata, read the PCAP, do the comparison, and then dump whatever it finds into the logs file. All right, so let's look at the next slide. So if we look into that logs file, if you have all these four, you're fine. But like I said, you have an extra one, right? You have an extra folder called file store. Ignore that for now. That's a different setting. So you can check out fast.log, right? So that's the summary, less verbose version of the output file. Fast logs, I like to use less. You can use more. Right? Oh, it does the checksum still. I don't know why. Okay. But what we're looking for here, what we are interested to look for here is this alerts, right? ET, emerging threats rule set. Export it. So the traffic is doing eternal blue, right? From this IP address, right? To another IP address over port 445, right? So you can see some rules being triggered, right? And a similar one as well. There's one here on double pulsar, right? If I highlight it, it goes dark, but if you look down here a bit, at the bottom there, you can see double pulsar, right? So those are defined in the rule set, right? And therefore it gets triggered. So imagine for a moment you are doing an analysis of something, right? You get this report, like email being reported earlier, and you want to validate or verify what is going on. So you may tell your IT person to say, hey, well, because we're going to investigate this, can we do a PCAP? Can we capture the traffic going out of this machine, right? Maybe not on the machine itself, from a different location. Capture the PCAP and then pass me the PCAP. Let me run it, using Suricata, right? So you can use Suricata as a tool just to give you some quick results. Basically to tell you that is this a known thing or not known thing, right? If it's a known thing, then you have the answer right away. Oh, double pulsar, eternal blue, wanna cry. There is additional information, MS17 010 here, which is the slips mine now, but basically the number assigned, CVE assigned for that particular vulnerability. So you can see it there. There is also other stuff here, right? Which is the JSON, right? So let's look at that. So if you just look at the JSON, it can be a bit complicated, right? So it looks like it doesn't look pretty at all. And this is where, in my example here, I ask you to use JQ, which is a tool that has been installed. So we can do something like this so that it is prettier. Let me see if I can copy this so I don't have to type it. All right. So yeah, so it looks a bit prettier. So so the data is more concise. These are field names, right? You can see instead of just one straight line of a bunch of information, the information has been categorized and you have field names. And this is why this can then be pumped into something like Elasticsearch or Splunk, right? In fact, Elasticsearch has now a CM feature. So if you use something like FileBeat to send this JSON file to Elasticsearch, it'll know how to handle it, in Elasticsearch. It has a, produces a map, some nice charts and things like that. So maybe if you have time, I can show it in my actual system of the CM feature of Suricata. But anyhow, this is just to show you the JSON. The JSON is very rich. So this file can be really large. I mean, if you run it if you run it nonstop, basically like monitoring a network, so you kind of have to watch it and then do a log cycle the logs to save space and so on. So it's very rich because, like I said earlier, it doesn't only contain data about alert, right? So you have event type alert, for example, but it also have a bunch of metadata stuff, right? DHCP, UDP, DNS related things. So a lot of protocol related information that can be useful, for doing some analysis at some point, or getting a snapshot of what is going on in your environment, right? So this is how it can be, or where it can be kind of useful as well. So let's try, maybe just take one of these commands, right? So this, if you're interested in using JQ, there's a bunch of tutorials for doing that. So it's got this convention of how to use it to search for fields inside a JSON file. We will not go into that. That's going to take maybe another hour to discuss, but I give some examples here. Again, this will not be so practical if you have to do it every day. I mean, once in a while, this can be useful if you are doing a bash script, right? This can be useful, but otherwise, see, this is what I mean. If you cut and paste, PowerPoint has modified something there, so don't simply cut and paste. It's probably going to give you an error. So let me try this. So edit this. That looks right. Okay. So I'm searching for anything that for the event type alert. If it's equals to alert, right, then you can just show it. You see a bunch of IPv6 checksum stuff. I thought we didn't check for checksum, but anyhow, pops up. But you can see other type of alerts in here. Let's just search for it. What is it called? Okay. Yeah, so as you can see, it's very detailed, right? It's got the signature, right? The signature name. It's got the source IP, destination IP, right? Protocol, what is in the alert. So like I said, this is why it can be useful, if you dump it into the Elasticsearch or something like that, something that can process JSON file. All right, moving on. So what we did there is just running Suricata on a PCAP, but the point of doing the whole thing was to uncover what happened, right? Who is attacking who? Like which IP is talking to which IP? What was the time, right? Is there anything else that we got? Well, from the signature, we have the CVE name, so we can check on it, and we'll find that, okay, if you see this CVE, it's related to Windows system, right? So we can make conclusions like that. What was the vulnerability? How long ago was this, right? And so on. So yes, you're doing threat hunting, but an IDS could be a supporting tool, right? At least it helps you figure out what is known already. And one thing that I will discuss later on, okay, we're going to go into this, is about the signature. But before that, let's look at the alerts, right? So this is from fast.log. Sometimes, this is all you need just to see what's going on. But if you need to put it in like Elasticsearch or Splunk, like I said, JSON is more useful. So you can see that, you can have the timestamp, right? What is it? Network Trojan, criticality. So this is TCP traffic from port 445 to a different port, but on a different IP address, as you can see here. So what was the rule, right? What is the rule that triggered this, right? So if you look into the rules directory, we can search for this. So the rule is just a text file. We will not be doing any rule writing, signature rule writing. That maybe will take another 2-3 hours. But if you like Suricata, then maybe one day we can do this. Anyhow, so the rule have a lot of convention as well. Good news is that on Suricata's website, they have a guide on how to write rules, right? So basically, a rule is a text file which tells Suricata when it is dissecting the PCAP, look for a couple of things, right? Look for string, or look for the port number or IP address. So anything that within the TCP/IP packet can be used to build a rule, right? You can also tell Suricata to look at this specific location, right? And then you can add some notes, what is this? Add the CVE information, The rest is signature ID. The flow, right? This rule will be triggered if traffic is going from our network to a server, right? And so on and so forth. So that's the details of it. Again, we're not going to go into it, but if you just out of if you're curious. Now, the rule itself, I've been talking about the rules. Now, in this installation, I have actually enabled three different rule sources, right? One is the ET. Actually, maybe we can just check. So these are some of the commands, right? So let's see. Okay. So sudo suricata. So the command is suricata update, right? For anything related to the rules. And then let's see. So we have some commands here we can try, and let us first list enable sources. So what list did I enable on this machine, on this VM? Sudo suricata update list enabled. Okay. So I have enabled actually 5 rule set. I thought I was only enabling 3. So there is SSL BL JA3 fingerprint and SSL false positive blacklist. I think FP, that's what it's for. But this is related to certificates, SSL, TSL certificates, right? So I have that. I have the rule set called T-green hunting. This is hunting for hunting things, right? So they're not very specific. I also have the OISF traffic ID. This is more, I think, related to it's for reputational IP. Actually, we can read the description later on. But as far as I can remember, it's for reputation. Like if an IP address is known to be like doing brute force, it will be flagged. But it also means that this can create a lot of alerts, right? That is not really serious because, an IP address that is in a blacklist somewhere is visiting our website. It's not really that critical. It's not, an intrusion related activity. But, if you enable this, then you're going to get a lot of alerts. Hey, this IP was seen, kind of thing. But it's not critical. Open is from the emerging threats, which is the official, which is the developer of Suricata. So they share some open source rules as well. When it comes to the rules, right? So let's do this. Let's just enable update list sources. So if you list this, I'm going to use more here. You can see the different providers. Some are actually commercial, so you can actually pay for some commercial rules, which means that they may be updated, right? I mean, more recent, and maybe they cover certain platforms or something like that. You can explore more, but there are many providers here, as you can see on the list, right? So the ones that I use are the free ones, right? And you can get information about them as well. So because rules are always developed, right? They can be dynamic. So over time, what you want to do is update the rule set. So what I normally do on a real production system, or before I use a rule, I didn't do it yet, is update the rules, right? So the command here is suricata update, right? If you just run suricata update, it will just pull everything from the sources that you have enabled and update the rule set. So you kind of have the latest rule update. I don't want to do it now because it's going to take a bit more time, but later on, maybe you can do it, or you can do it at your end so that I can just proceed with the next slide. Cool. All right. So that's a little bit about the rule set. So no mystery there. So it's just rule-based, and you can also write your own rules, right? So this is where if you know your environment and you learn a bit, you can actually craft your own rules so that you can apply it within your own infrastructure. Okay, so let's go to the next example. Next example is basically doing the same thing, but this time it's Dridex, right? And what I want to do here is I don't want to play with JQ anymore. I just want to skip and go straight to Okay, so I'm going to show this, and then I'm going to run if JSON. Right, so we're going to run this, but here, what is really happening is me showing you that the detection was based on certificate information. So this is to show that in a lot of cases, Surikata will do deep packet inspection. It will need to have access to content of the packet, right? If it's a string, but sometimes it's not possible because the traffic is encrypted. However, we can use other things like TLS certificates for our detection, right? Because if we know the TTP, the techniques, the tactic, right, then we can study, what are the names of organization that normally attackers do when they set up their certificates, right? Because sometimes they just put fake ones, or they're lazy to change the default, and we can use that to alert us to say, hey, there's traffic going to this host name based on the certificate information. We think this is suspect. And this is the case for Dridex, which is a very notorious malware, right? So let's do this. Let's do this very quickly. How are we doing with time? Okay, still good. Let's go out from this directory, sys2, and sudo surikata read. Actually, let me see if I have the logs already, so I don't have to run this. So because you know the drill already, I don't have it here. Okay, so I have to run it. Sudo surikata read. Yeah, actually, I could have just written a script for this, but I don't have to type it out. Anyhow, so we can just run this fairly quickly, right? And while waiting for that, you kind of know what I'm going to be showing you. So I'll just go to the example. So what I want to show you is that if you look at the if.json, you'll find that the signature that was triggered is the one related to JA3. Remember that source? And JA3 is a technique for analyzing certificate-related information, and we're using that information to fingerprint malicious traffic, right? Which is really cool, I think. So here it's saying that there's traffic going to port 443, right? And this is based on TLS blacklist that is related. A blacklisted TLS or certificate that is related to the Dridex Trojan, right? So this is really interesting, and this is relevant today because there's a lot of traffic that is encrypted in our infrastructure, right? So the thing that I want to highlight is this tool called JA3 or JA3S developed by Salesforce. Normally, if I do a signature writing workshop, we go a bit in depth on this because then we will see what fields we can use to develop a signature. And the whole idea is that based on the information provided in a certificate, we can actually do a hash and fingerprint, right? So Surikata will be doing those calculations. And when you see a TLS traffic or encrypted traffic, it will then checking those things and not the content of the packet itself, right? Which can be useful. Of course, attackers can know that we are doing this as well, but it's an extra tool in our arsenal that we can use for doing a bit of detection. Now, just to quick highlight where the hash is coming from. So this is a dump from Wireshark, where you can actually see different fields or headers within the packet. So JA3 basically says that pick a couple of fields, right? And then from those fields we can generate the signature or the fingerprint, right? So that's kind of the idea, and this can be done automatically with the tool as well. So we can pick that up. So that's the bit I want to show you about Surikata, and this is again just to demonstrate the usefulness of tools when doing threat hunting, because it can give you additional insights. Obviously, that's kind of hard to do manually, but if you can understand, if you get information about certain threat actors, you study how they do their campaigns, you get the information, you can compare across campaigns, how do they sign, right, their certificate, and if you see a pattern, then we can develop that into a rule, right? So then your hunt will be a bit more meaningful and evidence-based hunt. All right. Another example here, but here I want to run Surikata on traffic from a bunch of honeypots, right? But this time we don't want to look into the data manually. We're going to be using ifbox, which is the other tool that I have installed. So you can have an interesting, a nice GUI here. So let's do that. So this is done, but I'll skip that because I've shown you what I wanted to show you. Again, same story. Let me see if I have the logs. I don't, so I have to run it again. I should have done this before, right? Srikata read, Kauri, PCAP. All right. So you kind of have gotten the drill. So what's interesting here, right, while waiting for that to process, is that with ifbox, right? So ifbox is the tool that will kind of read the JSON and then display the information for you. So now you can actually can browse through the JSON by by clicking. All right, that was quick. So let's do this. So we have I think you guys are following closely. I don't see any question or anyone requesting for me to slow down. Ifbox. So it's one shot. Right. So just gonna run that. Oh, not what am I missing? One shot. Let me see. Maybe I need a flag there. Yeah, I got it. Ifbox. One. Oh, okay. I had okay. Spelling mistake. So it's kind of loading that, and if everything is okay, then the browser will be open. All right. So now it's a lot easier to go through basically the JSON file. Not only you can see the alerts automatically, but you can also see what other rules that was triggered, right? And this is a lot easier to see than using something like fast.log, which is the text file, and you can see the details. So if it's something like red here, right, it might be a bit critical, I think. So you can see login attempt, and related, right? Related to Mirai, the Mirai botnet. And it's an attempt to gain admin privilege. You can see the details, the part of the JSON that is being picked up here, all the details there. But the interesting bit here is that you can also see the metadata, right? Quite easier, right? And you can also then pivot, right? So I'm looking at one output, like a very specific rule, but I can maybe just follow, right, this flow ID to see what else is related to this. So you can pivot and zoom in and so on and so forth, right? So this is the value of tools, actually having tools actually. So it's quicker, right? You can also see things a lot easier. Not necessarily just this tool, any tools for that matter, right? And it's just having that ability to move through things very quickly that will make your incident response activity a lot quicker. And again, what's beautiful about the rule set is that you can get an indicator what's going on already. So I know that here there's a lot of Mirai related attacks or attack traffic, right? And these are the password that is being attempted. So it's being highlighted in the rule name as well. But you also see some benign stuff, right? Something that is not necessarily bad, right? But it's kind of suspicious, right? So in this particular case, it says, it's related to path to busybox, right? I'm trying to see why is it doing that. So let's see, let's go into flow ID maybe. Okay, so it's going to telnet, right? Looking for busybox based devices, right? So that just just trigger some suspicion, because it doesn't. So there was a file name actually. All right. So there was a file name in the packets in the telnet packet that made it suspicious, right? So it triggered that and so on. So you can actually see a lot of stuff here as well, including, an exploit attempt, right? So this is, let's go into the signature, right? So exploit attempt to high silicon DVR, which is probably an IoT device, and it's coming in, right? And so that's what happened when I click on the rule set, and then you can, like I said earlier, you can pivot to different different aspects of the rule set. So that's Evebox. Basically, that's what I want to show you. Again, Evebox is not unique in doing this. If you have this data in Elasticsearch or Splunk, you can more or less do it. But this is just to show you some alternative tool that you can do, with the network data that you have in doing your incident response and analysis. Okay, let's move on, right? In example 4, I'm going to be doing the same thing, but this time we are going to extract the file from a PCAP, right, from a traffic. So there might be some scenarios when you want to do this. You may not want to do this all the time, but there might be a situation where you just want to make it quick. Of course, you can do this in Wireshark as well. You can have if you have a PCAP, you can dump objects. But I just want to show how you can actually do this with something like Suricata. There are some configuration that you have to set in YAML. I have done that already for you, so it's been set already. And you have to just run, for our example, run Suricata with one specific rule, which basically says, if there's anything that looks like a file, dump it, in our directory, right? So we're going to call this extract.rule. So I've made this already available in that folder, so you can just run this particular command. So let's do this. So I'm going to stop Evebox, ex4. Okay, so far so good. So here you are seeing for the first time this flag called -s, capital S, right? So this means exclusive rule, right? Suricata, read the PCAP, and -s. So -l means exclusive. So just execute this rule, single rule, so single or exclusive rule, and we're going to dump everything in logs. So if you run that, okay, let's see. Okay, so it's done. So if you go to logs, there's a folder called file store. You can actually change this name in the configuration, but so you need to be root, sorry, file store. So what they do is they extract different files in different packets and put it in different places, right, in different folders. So there's a lot of files in all these different folders. So what we can do quickly is something like, just to see what is being picked up. So you can use something like file. So just see there. So there's a lot of directory. Yeah, but in some of the directory, 0406, you can find some text file, some shell script, some Linux binary, ELF32-bit, right? So those files are actually from the PCAP itself, right? So so this is practical. I mean, I don't have to open a something like Wireshark to dump everything. So, and it's done using, just one single command line, and it's there. So if I just want to see, right, what's in those files, then it's basically showing me, there's a bunch of interesting stuff there. Bash, Linux binary, right, and so on. So from this information, right, we can search for, additional insights. Remember earlier I showed you the Hive, so I can take all this file and dump them in the Hive, or I can look at all these details, right? So these are the hash. So you can actually take this and then go on a site like VirusTotal and search for it, right? So if it's known or not, or you can do your reverse engineering if you want to. If we, so some are text file. So let's have a look at this text file. This can be a bit interesting. So we can copy this. So if I say what's the content of this file, then you can see that this is a shell script that was in the PCAP, and it's probably not. It doesn't look like it's a good thing, right? So somebody is trying to download something and then change mod, execute, and then remove the sample, and this program is probably running. Looks like a typical Linux-based malware, right? Infection. So that's captured within the PCAP using Suricata. So that's basically the thing that I wanted to share with you, like the power of using tools like Suricata or any other tools for that matter. It will make your threat hunting more insightful, right? Even if you don't use the tool, you know the capabilities of the tool, and it's just additional information that you would have. And it helps frame your mindset as well in what to look for, right? And what can be searched within the artifacts or the information that you have. What I've just shown you is maybe one use case of Suricata. Definitely, you can use this in multiple ways. I showed you earlier, Elasticsearch showing how Suricata can be integrated with something like Wazoo, which is like host-based IDS. And we have all this. So Suricata is listening from a switch to the span port. So it's seeing traffic coming from your databases or some host, right? So it's generating alerts, and all these alerts is being sent to Elastic Stack, which then can be combined with logs from Wazoo or OSEC or OS Query or Sysmon or FileBeat, right? So when you are searching for things, you just go to this one place, search for a combined, data. So that's kind of how you would do it in a big picture. This is another example, just taking Suricata, and this is from one of the presentations from a Suricata developer at SharkFest. So in his deployment, he says, Suricata is running, it's on a tap or span port, seeing a bunch of traffic. Of course, this setup must be quite powerful in terms of the resources that it has, because depending on how much traffic you are listening to, you need more power or more resources, because otherwise it will start dropping packets. But in this setup, basically they are also doing full packet capture, not only matching packets to signatures, generating alerts. They are also capturing PCAPs, which then require a lot of storage. And for that, they use something called Moloch for going through those PCAP, going deep into the stuff, because alerts contain summary of information, right? Because sometimes you need the PCAP itself for doing stuff. Again, using Elasticsearch in combination with Evebox, for quick pivoting through the logs, and Elasticsearch and Kibana for showing other things combined with other logs, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of the big picture. And this is the preparation bit, the design, the architecting, before you can actually do the threat hunting. I mean, threat hunting is a concept, but you kind of have to build the infrastructure on your own to be able to do that. And then there's a bunch of other tools that I did not even cover here. Tools like Sigma for searching your Elasticsearch, for certain activities. There's Yara, for example, for looking for certain things within malicious files. That's very popular. There is ElastAlert. So I don't want to be searching manually like what I'm doing just now. So I'm just going to tell Elasticsearch, hey, if you see this combination of this thing within your data set, send an email to me or send it to a Slack channel. So that's where my focus is, because I'm not going to be looking at this dashboard every single minute. That's not how I work, right? So I'm going to write tools to do the query on my behalf, send it to Slack, send it through email, then I respond to it. Or send it to my Hive, the Hive, right? So then I can see a ticket coming in, I can process it there, and then do all this correlation back and forth. So that's kind of the bigger picture that I want to show you here. Not just Suricata itself, but I thought Suricata is also a cool tool that maybe not many people have a chance to play with in depth. All right, so Suricata, have a look at it. Again, don't just limit yourself to Suricata. Check out Snort, Zeek. They kind of address the same topic, but I love Suricata. The last topic before we end the session, let me see what the time is. I have about half an hour. So the last topic that I want to talk about is honeypots. I see this as something that can be useful for threat hunting, right? But this is not going through logs, right? I mean, I'm not searching my logs. You can search your logs, right? But this is something different. This is a different concept. So honeypots and honey tokens, that's what I'm going to talk about. So I have a bunch of bee photos. That's another hobby of mine that I do when I'm not looking at a computer. These are bees in the backyard. There are bees that are native to Australia. And what's interesting about them is that they don't produce any honey, right? They don't live in colony, but they are useful because they pollinate the plants and very beautiful. My story here is that I learned about these bees and then I started to plant certain plants that will attract them, right? So that I can sit there and wait for them to come and take photos. That's basically the concept of the honeypots that we're going to be talking about there. Anyhow, I digress. Honeypots is not new. It's not a new concept, right? Remember earlier when we talk about remediation, recovery, we talk about this idea that maybe we don't want to alert the attacker, right? We want to learn more about them, what they're doing, right? What else have they uncovered? Why are they there, right? So this book is one of the first book that talks about that. And it's an old book, actually. It was written in 1989. And it's about this guy. I don't know if you guys have read this book or not, but it was about this guy who was a scientist working in a lab, and he noticed an accounting error, 75 cents accounting error. And he got really suspicious. And then he discovered that some of the system has been compromised from another lab. All right. And then he set up a couple of things, right, to lure the attacker into exposing, right, themselves. And one of the things that he did was he made a bunch of fake documents, right? And he put information there that will tell him where the attacker is coming from, because he made some, I think he put some phone numbers on and postal address. Attacker sending a mail there, snail mail, right? So it was kind of like a trap, but it was a secure environment control as well. But it's really interesting. And it's basically the story about honeypots that we know today, right? So there's a mix of monitoring, deception, detection, right? And basically, I think this idea can also be linked to, if you think about threat hunting, something that you can easily set up, right? And basically what you're doing there is counting on attacker to be very interested to make a mistake, right? So you set up a host that looks like a real server. There's no production value there, and the goal there is to make the attacker touch it, right? Because you won't do it, you won't interact with it because it's a fake system. But if you can trick the attacker in going there, you can use that as a detection that, hey, someone is there in our network, which can then allow you to then do this threat hunting or analysis and so on. So if you don't want to read the book, I have a link here where you can actually watch the author talking about his story in one of the SANS conference, which I find very fascinating. So earlier in our example, we use a compromised system, right, to trigger our incident response process. Somebody send us an alert, we do the investigation. But learning from an incident like that can be a bit difficult sometimes because you don't have compromised system every day to learn from, right? And you have to do a lot of work as well when you have a real system being compromised and you do the incident response. What if you can emulate real system and attract adversaries, right? Attract attackers. You can be there to collect and observe information. You can use this for detection, right? Of course, you must do this in a very controlled environment as well. Honeypots is nothing new, right? There's a bunch of books. There's even, a group. I recently bought a book, Intrusion. I don't know if you can see it. It's yellow. I have a picture of it. It's called Intrusion Detection Honeypots, right? Lots have been written about this. It's a concept. It's an idea that I think is very cheap to deploy and do. As we talk about preparation, and so on. So it's basically trying to understand who the actor is, what they do, and so on. My experience with honeypots go way back in 2005 here, right? There was Zotop, the worm that I heard was spreading somewhere, right? And the clue that we got was that Zotop was going after port 445. So we set up a simple honeypot that will emulate SMB and just see who is hitting it, right? So we can say, oh, okay, it's here as well. And we have the source IP, which is a telltale of potentially compromised devices already with the worm. So we can go there, get a sample, and also advise the owners of the system that, you got infected by a malware. And this is how we knew, right? This was the initial point. Of course, you have to do a bit more investigation. So that was my story with honeypots way back when, right? So I find it very practical, easy to set up. And this is something that we can actually use inside our network, the enterprise network, as well, because the assumption here is that if you go to the MITRE ATT&CK framework again, right? So there are various stages of the compromise. One, right? We want to increase our chance of detection. A honeypot will actually allow us to do that, right? If the attacker managed to come in, or if the attacker is already inside, that means that they have managed to bypass some of the security controls that we have in place. So to increase our detection of detecting this person, right, we can use honeypots, right? So hopefully the attacker will trip over it. If not, then at least we tried. So it's a resource. It's a resource whose value lies in unauthorized or illicit use of the resource. So by right, no one should be talking to the honeypot. No one should be touching our honey tokens, which I'll talk about later on, right? It has no value at all. There should be, there should not be any traffic to it. If there is, then that's suspect already, right? So we can eliminate the false positive. So something going on there that we can kind of investigate. So it has no production value. So some people ask me, can I put a honeypot on my web server? No, you can't, because you're mixing real traffic and malicious traffic. So better you have a standalone honeypot, right? Where anything that comes to it is suspicious or malicious already. So it's cleaner for you to analyze and so on and so forth. So some people talk about honey nets, which is basically a bunch of honeypots that you can link up together. All right, so a bit more theoretical stuff. Low interaction, medium interaction, high interaction. Basically, in a lot of the honeypots that I use, there are emulated services. So they're not real Windows system that I put out to be compromised. It's a system that emulates some Windows services, but it's probably running on a Linux machine. And the interaction is kind of real, so that attacker will do a bit more than just probe it, right? They will send a message to it, try to log in. Even if they try to log in, I let them log in. They have a fake shell. They issue the commands. I capture a bit more information. So you can find low interaction, high interaction honeypots in the literature, but we're not going to go in depth into those things. A lot of the honeypots type that we see are server-based, which means that they're just listening, right? Listening for connection to happen. Some people develop this client-based honeypot, which emulates browsers. So they feed this client honeypots URL to visit. So it will see if there is malware on a website, malicious files, programs. So that's kind of a different type of honeypots. But the one that I'll be discussing more today are the server-based honeypots, because We want to emulate something that people might be interested to connect to within the infrastructure, right? And of course, yes. So the other thing that before going to the honeypot example, something called honey tokens, right? So these are things that you can set up, like a file, right? Or a URL, or a DNS that is kind of unknown to the that is not useful for you or your team, right? But you put it there just to attract someone to kind of pick it up, touch it, copy it, access it, right? And when they do that, you get an alert, a trigger, right? And this can also be useful. For example, how do you know if there is someone in your computer, right? Maybe this person is so good, they have disabled everything. But what if you have a file in your computer to say top secret.doc, right? An attacker will be so tempted to open it. Of course, when they open it, then you can trigger a callback somewhere and you get the alert. And that is a confirmation that someone just touched that file in my system. It means that someone is there. So that's kind of the concept. And you can sprinkle these honey tokens in different places as well. So it's kind of deception that leads to a detection, right? So again, it's not hard to deploy as well. And I will show you some example. So so a tool that we can use is called Canary Token. So if you go to this website, you have the option of generating some tokens, right? Some of these honey tokens. And if the attacker access the tokens or copy the tokens, you get an alert. For these honey tokens, the setup is through email. So when you set up a honey token, you have to give your email address, and then you can generate a PDF file, a Word document, and so on. And you can put it, again, like I said, in different places. The idea is that you want attacker to actually use it or be tempted to use it. This is an example of a file server, right? I can create a directory. The rest are legitimate files, but this folder, infrastructure, that's the bait, right? And network infrastructure, notes, docs, server setup, latest, that's the honey token that I generated with canarytokens.org, right? So when someone opened this file, then it will do a callback and I will get a message from through email. So such as this one, right? Canary token trigger. This is an email snapshot. It says channel is HTTP. This is the timestamp, right? When you generate a token in Canary token, it will ask you to put like a note, what is this token about, right? So you can know which token was triggered. So you can say token in the file server, or token in the email server, token in my computer, or here, in this case, token for a conference that I did, a demo, right? So I knew that this token was triggered by someone there. And some user agent and a source IP address, right? So I can know where this is coming from. So this can be quite useful and practical. The other one is you can generate like a QR code. So if you scan this with your phone, if you want to do it now, then I might get some alerts through my email in a few moments if you take a picture of this particular alert, right? Go ahead, try it. It will not compromise any of your system. But yeah, I should get an alert that looks like this to say that someone just triggered it. I forgot to put a token in the Google Drive. I should have put one there so you guys, open it, see what happens. All right, so that's the honey token. And again, it's a deception technique that we can use. Now, going back to the honeypots, right? Okay, so actually before doing that, so if you use something like Canary tokens, it's a service operated by someone, right? So sometimes you may want to do your own. I mean, it's not that difficult to do. Canary token, I think they have open source version where you can actually deploy your own server that can be then called back and you get alerted. And the idea of also when you are alerted, normally you want to use a different channel of communication. You don't want to use your same infrastructure, because what if your own email has been compromised and your alert is coming through your office email that has been compromised? So attacker is actually seeing that, oh, they have detected my presence because I can read their email. So the idea is we want to use a different channel for alerting, maybe just a separate domain name for alerting, or a Slack channel or an SMS. So you don't use the same infrastructure, because your assumption will be this this very infrastructure that I'm monitoring has been compromised, and therefore I want to get the alert through different means. So yes, I'm beginning to receive an email, right, already from Canary Token email. Somebody just opened that. I'll show you later, right, so that when I switch screen, I don't have to disable my VM, right? Cool stuff. All right. So going back to honeypots, a lot of people use honeypots, but what they do is, like myself, I do a lot of research honeypots. So we deploy honeypots on the internet, right? Which is very noisy. It gets attacked, scanned, probed every single day. This is more for research work, basically. I want malware samples. I want to study campaigns and so on and so forth. And when we do something like that, you may want to use a framework that allows you to manage your honeypots in a distributed manner. So Teapot or Community Honey Network is one such tool or framework that will allow you to deploy many honeypots, right? And do all the visualization like this, integration with Elasticsearch, so I can have a map and so on and so forth. So you have different kinds of honeypots. But if you want to do it internally at the enterprise level, right, maybe you go for something that is a bit simpler, right? And in this case, for this workshop, I'm gonna suggest Open Canary, which is a tool, Python-based, that we can deploy. So that's basically what I want to show you later on, right? It's just a standalone tool, something you can set up easily, maybe using some leftover computers that you have at work, or if you want to use Raspberry Pi, or or one of those small things. I have one at home as well that I run. But before doing something like this, I'm getting a lot of alerts now from my Canary token. Before doing any of this, right, from this book that I have here, right, Chris Sanders, the idea is that if you do a honeypot or a honey token, you want attacker to see it, right? So it's not like really hidden. So they should be able to see it, but they will think that it's real. So that's the concept, right? And they want to do something with it, access it, connect to it, right? And when they do that, we will know. So that's kind of the idea, right? Concept of the whole thing. So when you do this, then a few things come into play. Location, what services you want to emulate, right? If you are a Windows environment, right, you probably want to be emulating some Windows services, because if suddenly you have a random service in the network, and attacker is kind of smart, they're like, that doesn't look like real, and it looks like a trap that they want me to connect to. So profiling of a network, so that's where your creativity comes into play as well. Assumption that you make, right? So the assumption that we have when we have something like a honeypot in our enterprise network is that, well, attacker will have to, attacker will want to know what else in my network, right? So once they get in, they will scan. So that's my assumption. They will scan and look for hosts and try to connect to. So I am counting on that behavior so that they will see my honeypot. They will find my honeypot, right? So that's kind of the assumptions that I make. What else? What other assumptions that I make? Okay, so I want to know if attacker have uncovered my username password file. So I create a few fake username password that will not be used on a real system. But if I see that being used on my honeypot, it means that attacker managed to get to that location that I was supposed to defend. So it's not game over yet, but he's there. He or she is there, right? So I know for sure, because this information is not in other places. It's only in one location. So if they use this credential, it means that they are definitely there, right? So I use this to guide my thing, and how you will receive the alert. So we discussed about that earlier. So in the same VM, I have installed Open Canary for you. It's not that difficult to install or set up. It requires Python, right? So when we run it, the way we run it in this lab, we can have to run it in a virtual environment kind of thing. But you can easily create a script to run this automatically as a system. And you can do a lot of configuration for sending the logs to email or to other places, to Slack, to SMS. But for the sake of the VM, I did not change much, but I have some guide for you if you want to play further with it. The reason why I installed it for you is so that you can actually just play with it right away. So it's called Open Canary. It's by the same people who develop Canary tokens. And in fact, they also sell commercial honeypots if you don't want to do installation yourself. I'm not getting any commission for mentioning this. Just want to say, these are from the people who develop those tools as well. You can have different personalities. So there are a lot of services that you can turn on, but it is kind of weird if you have, let's say, for example, MySQL, MSSQL, right, SMB running on the same machine, right? So you wanna pick and choose what you emulate, right, to make it kind of realistic. But if you just want to play with it, you can turn on all the services. So that is in the opencanary.com file. I will show you later on, including some alerting options. So what we're going to do here is we are going to look at our VM before we run the honeypot, and then we are going to turn on the honeypot, right? And these are some of the commands. Because we're using Python virtual environment, so we use this work on Open Canary. So I have set this up for you basically. And then we run Open Canary D start, and then we can check what's running now. And we can scan it or connect to it and then see the log. So that's basically the idea of this very short exercise, okay? All right, so if we go to our host, same host here, so I'm just gonna exit. So I have Nmap already installed. So you can scan your own machine. Right, so it's got 445 running because I installed Samba as part of this honeypot. So the Samba itself is not a honeypot, but okay, so Samba itself is a real service, but the honeypot will be using it, right? So, but as you can see here, there's not many service running or listening at the moment. You can also use soft, I think. Yeah, so you can see, what services are running. So those are probably some real services. And now we are going to turn on the honeypot, right? So work on, I hope this works. Okay, there we go. So if you see something like this, we are in the virtual environment. Maybe you guys who are developing in Python, you know this. So it doesn't matter. We can just run open Canary D, right? So if you want to see what other commands option there, you can say help, start, stop, restart, coffee config for setting up the initial configuration. I did that earlier. Dev will basically dump everything in the console, so you can see, everything that is happening within the honeypot. Otherwise, we can just use start. So open Canary D start. So it's running. It's complaining about IP tables. Maybe you can set that up for some of the functionality. But basically, now it says Canary running there. So all of this should be in the logs as well. We will see that in a short while. But if now you run nmap localhost, you should be able to see more services, right? So the idea is kind of to tempt attacker. Like I said, I just randomly turn on a bunch of services for demonstration purposes. But if you were to customize this, you want to make this a bit more realistic. So if you have MySQL, maybe turn on SSH also. But otherwise, another setup with Windows services, just to make it a bit more realistic. But for demo purposes, I'm just turning on everything. Now, before going to the config file, I just want to show you, let's say if you go to, if you open a browser, we have a browser here, right? And imagine you are on an attacker in the network, and you scan and you see, oh, port 80 on this particular server, and you try to connect to it. But because I'm demonstrating on the same machine, so I'm going localhost. But imagine I'm in a remote machine. I go to the server, right? I'm saying, oh, okay, so backup Synology. So this is part of the honeypot, right? The idea is that, well, someone is accessing it, and the moment they try to log into it, then I get additional insight that, okay, someone is really trying to get into it. So MySQL is up, so I can try to connect using Netcat, for example, localhost. Right, someone will see this as well, right? And they get the MySQL prompt there, and all of this activity is now being logged, right? So that's the value of it. So it's being logged, and remember the concept: no traffic should be going to our honeypot, but because someone did, then it raises an alert. Of course, you probably have to plan it with the team, so that people are not randomly going there. But this can also be useful to uncover insiders that are scanning the office network and so on, right? So the next thing that I want to show you, I know we have a few minutes left, almost done here, is the configuration file. So in the configuration file, it's pretty simple. Oh, sorry, it's not clear. So etc open canary. Right, so it's in this format, right? So you can see enable on, right? Enable true or false, right? So that's basically where you set up on and off. There are further config that you can do, maybe change the FTP server name, change the HTTP banner. So you can do a bunch of that within this file as well. Where you log the stuff, right? So there is a section here about where you log. So here it's in var temp open canary log. You can change that. But also in this section, if I show you the next slide, right? In this section, there is also a configuration where you can actually get Open Canary to send you an email, right? So I do that for a bunch of my honeypots. Of course, I don't use my office email for that. I created some email accounts in different places. You can use Gmail if you want to, but I use some other domains. So Open Canary emails that mailbox. That mailbox will email me, right? So I have that set up there as well. You can use Slack, and this is what I get, right? Open Canary alert, right? From one of the emails that I set up, and it says, someone accessed the web page of NAS login, and this is the IP address. You can see the IP address, .99. This is the user agent. It has a Safari browser, and this is a timestamp. So I get that alert as well. Sorry, we don't have time to go in depth into setting this up, but I hope I managed to get you excited and explore more. There are some documentation there. You may have some issues in doing the configuration, but feel free to reach out to me if you have any problems. I've deployed so many of these, so I might be able to help you. So to conclude, guys, thank you for staying till the end. So we covered a lot of topics here, but I think the bottom line is, practice and learning makes perfect, right? So it's all about, slowing down, thinking about security, and then trying to gather all these ideas with the tools and to deploy something that work for you. What is key in this presentation is it's evidence-based, right? It's data-based, it's data-driven, information-driven, intel-driven. That's how we work. It's based on fact, right? It's based on information. The good news is that we don't have to try that hard to get some of the information. If you talk to your CERT, your security agency, maybe they can help you to have access to some of this information online. Of course, you can always contact me as well, right? And don't be shy to get your hands dirty, because I think, to me, that's where you can really appreciate your infrastructure, your tools. It enhances your understanding of things. It clarifies a lot of misconception and assumptions, and that's what it did for me. So get your hands dirty, get your team to get their hands dirty, share knowledge with one another, and yes, don't get shy to get help, feel free to reach out to me. And last but not least, another shout out for Cybersecurity East for allowing me to be here, part of this event. And I thank all the 51 people that I cannot really see, but it's there listening, I hope, and maybe trying some of this stuff. So thank you. If you have any questions or if you want to have any feedback, I'm around. I can stay here for a few minutes. But if not, feel free to reach out to me or to the CERT, the cybersecurity agency, if you need any help. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Adli. Great work. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
No worries. It's a pleasure, Besnik.
Yeah.
Thanks to you as well.
Thank you so much.
All right. I guess that's it. Unless the organizer would like to say something to everybody. I don't know if there's any message from the organizer. No worries. Yeah. You're welcome, Alex and other friends. Hopefully one day I can see you guys somewhere, maybe in Moldova, maybe in other conferences. We'll be in touch. Okay, then I guess that's it from me then. I will then turn off my camera, definitely. Turn off my camera. I will paste the link. I will just show the link again one more time in case people did not see where the materials are. Maybe just for a few seconds. Where was that? Okay. Yeah, that's where everything is, including the VM. If you need to download it, if you want me to email you stuff as well, happy to do it. Otherwise, thank you guys. Have a very lovely day, nice day. I heard it's cold there, so enjoy the rest of the day and keep in touch. Bye-bye.